Hello. Unbelievably, no drama from YouTube. Bang on 9 o'clock. It's a miracle. Hello. How is everybody? I can see you are all chatting away. So let me catch up with who is in and say hello to everybody. Oh, Kim was first. But Jonathan was talking to the family, so that'll be why. Hello, Kim. And Kiva's asleep. Mike, move Lola's chicken because it has the power to wake Kiva up in Seattle.
Downstairs, I think.
Oh, that's all right then. It was upstairs the last I saw. Lola was asleep. Then there was a bit of a yipping incident, and now she's back asleep again. Hello, Neil. And Elaine probably prepping. Yes, Elaine fighting manfully with YouTube as ever. Hello, Jonathan. Hello, Debbie. Who else have we got? I think that's it for now. If I forget, Deb. Hello, CQ Deb. Hello, Debbie. Oh, we've got all the Debs in tonight. Excellent, excellent. And I'm live. Thank you, Jonathan. Ooh, the unboxing. Lovely talking to Jonathan. Fabulous, fabulous. I'm thinking, Jonathan, we need to put that in a MacBites and call it 128. Oh, no, hang on. I haven't done 127 yet. Don't want to get you too giddy. We could do that. We could definitely do that. Especially when you've got your speed tests and all of that. Oh, excellent. Hello, Peter. Neil's got a rather crude Magic Keyboard unboxing. We'll try and get ready. Excellent, excellent. We don't worry about how poshed up it is with all lights and stuff like that. Actually, you know, I was watching a YouTube video the other day. It was classic. And fair play to the lady concerned. She's chatting away and a row of lights explode behind her. And she just looks at the camera and says, and that's about the 5th time that's happened, and turns them back on and carries on. Sounds like an average day here, to be honest. Anyway, before we get going, because the first thing I normally do is share my desktop with you, but I've got something before we even do that. Oh, you know when you've got some software and it's got a feature and it's fabulous, but you're never ever on this planet going to have a need for it. That. Only I found a need for it. So, Jonathan, brace yourself. Who knew that would be so amazingly useful? I've got the pro version of Wirecast, and I have never, ever had the need for the scoreboard. However, now I do, and I've got it all set up. So that's the state of play at the moment. By the end of the show tonight, Jonathan's hoping to make it 4-4. I'm hoping to make it 5-3. So we'll see how that goes. Right, so I need to lose that. Whee, gone. And I need to make sure that you can see my desktop. I'll show you how to do that one day, Jonathan. It's actually a built-in feature. And I said to Mike when we were looking at the standard version or the pro version, and I said, can't ever see we're going to need that. And Mike said, no. And I said, but there are some other pro features that are actually useful. So we went for it for that. And then the other day, I just thought, oh, hang on a minute. Genius. So it's all keyed up in Wirecast and I can keep a track of it. Team Jonathan are predicting 4-4. Whose side are you on, Mike? Careful. Careful. Oh, taking a little bit too long to come up with an answer there.
I posted in Slack.
Did you? Did you really? Well, let's get on with it. Tonight's show 77. You ever thought you'd see the day? Talking of which, have you noticed with Marooned at MacBites headquarters, we're almost at the crossover point. Almost. We'll see how we go in terms of numbers. There have been the most MacBite shows. There have been more podcasts than After Hours and more After Hours than Marooned. But Marooned could take over. Oh, we've got to keep our eye on this thing. We could have multiple scoreboards. I'm liking this. Jonathan may have the edge tonight as he's giddy with his new MacBook Pro. True, but he has had a long day because he was doing the laying the man trap thing this morning and turning everything onto full volume so he didn't miss the delivery. So you never know. Good morning, Deborah. That's the final Deb in. We're all here. We have all the Debs with us tonight. Excellent. So what are we doing? Well, we've got the week at MacBites headquarters. Oh, another fabulously entertaining week. We've then got a new toy, Photoshop camera. Then we've got, now this was requested in Slack, a deep dive on the Notion pricing update. Paul in Ohio was bang on point when he said, they give you the one hand and take away with the other. What's going to be missing? Yes, that. So I will give you all the details of that. Then, Doughnuts. Not giving you any more details. It's Doughnuts. Then we've got the virtual clapperboard that I mentioned last week that you were all interested in. Then we've got our freebies. I have 4 freebies today. Then we've got Mike and his Access VBA. And then rolling edits that I also mentioned last week. So before we go any further, make sure you have clicked 720 in the drop down, the cog, below the video on the right hand side. And while you're down there, if you enjoy the show, give us a like. It really makes a difference with YouTube. Okay, the week at MacBites headquarters. It's always infinitely fascinating if you're not involved in it, with the calamities one after the other. But Saturday was a good day. It marked the start of my birthday week, and we did that on one of our Brooklyn shows, which is our by request show. Now, it may have been my birthday, but I got Mike a present. And I kept it until Saturday night, at which point I handed it over. He's got a new wig. He had a blonde wig. He had a black wig. He now has a 1980s mullet wig. It's his favourite, isn't it?
I wore that last night.
You did. You went to one of his meetings in it. And we had a blast on Saturday night. Oh, he really enjoyed himself. But he didn't forget me. He brought in the middle of the show, he said, you just introduce this next song and carry on talking. And he wandered in with a little cupcake for my birthday, which I proceeded to have during the show. So between songs, there I was. Oh, we've got lots of more people joining us. Hello, Carl. Paul's in. Hello, Paul. So on to Sunday. We knew what we were doing on Sunday, but we didn't share it until much later. We were in the studio. It was recording day, and we were lovingly creating MacBites 126. Sunday, also, the milk crates were still there. Mike and his magically multiplying milk crates. Picture's a bit ropey, got it off my video, but you can see we have 2 green crates and 2 black crates full of milk bottles. However, it wasn't just the milk bottles. Oh no! The reason that I was using my camera was something far different. I just thought I would point out that said milk bottles are still there. But this was Sunday night, ready for my birthday in the week. So yes, we had another Asda delivery, bless him. And he brought it all. And look, there's people out walking. They should be inside. But do you know it took him 12 minutes to unload that lot?
Did it?
I know that because I've got the video of him doing it. But there you go. We had a delivery, which took us on to Monday. Monday, 2-show Monday. That's unusual, isn't it? So do you realise how many weeks, how many days this week there's been 2 shows? We went straight from Marooned to the release of 126. So if you were with us on Marooned, you got early dibs on it. And apparently you all enjoyed it. Like the squirrel myself on the tree. Tuesday was indeed my birthday. Yay! Had a ball. Mike is still wearing the wig. In fact, somebody asked if that was his real hair. He's quite attached to it. Not satisfied with the birthday cake on Saturday, he also got me another one and some gluten-free shortbread. We thought that was going to be it. You can see my cards behind there as well. The one on the left, that was from Jonathan. But it wasn't. Oh, we had visitors on our path. Paying homage to the lovely Lola, obviously. Not there for any other purpose. But seriously, if you have been with us on Brooklands, that is Carolyn on the left and Kath on the right. And Joe, that we never hear from, in the middle. And they had brought me... Carolyn's taken up baking. She is furloughed from work and she works with children, so it's going to be a bit tricky to get back there. But she's taken up baking and she made her first gluten-free cake for me. We've since partaken of some of that, and it's fabulous. It was gorgeous. We couldn't see on the outside. You can see the buttercream just at the bottom, but it was actually full of strawberry as well. Oh, it was fabulous. Loved it. At which point, Mike produced a gift, and it's absolutely beautiful. Look at that. That's my boy. That's not our girl. That's my boy. Filthy, as usual. His aim in life, every night after his walk, he would come home and you can see the blue bit is, it's like a paddling pool stroke sand pit. You could put water in it or you could put sand in it. And he loved to dig. So he'd dig and he'd truffle his nose into it. He'd get sand all over himself, as you can see. And then he'd flop and sit in it while we sat on the garden bench, didn't he? So Mike got that picture put on a cushion so I can cuddle him. And I've been doing that this week. He's in the office with me. Oh, it is. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. So thank you very much for that, Mike. That was so thoughtful.
You're welcome.
You just want to share it, though, too, don't you? He's gorgeous. Now, back to Wednesday. Now, remember that we've looked at Sunday. We've had Monday. We've had Tuesday. It is now Wednesday. Craigate, still there. However, and I checked my cameras back for you on this, Mike. I checked at night and they were still there. When I checked at sunrise, because obviously I can't see in the dark, they'd gone. They have gone. So another very dodgy picture. It's a bit blurry. And that's because things are blowing in the wind. But they've gone.
They probably picked them up when they delivered the milk in the morning.
Well, if they did, it was before it was light. Which was, it's a
Maybe
surprise.
they used to bark at the milkman at 5:30 in the morning.
I know, that's why we couldn't take him out. We had to take him out in the mornings, lest he wake all the neighbours, between the bin men and the milkman. He had to go out when there was nobody around because he wanted to ride on the milk float and he didn't like the bin men, full stop. So we had to kind of sneak him out. Oh no, Deborah, Rudy's had an accident. He's in a cage. Oh dear. Give him a hug. Give him a hug. Then I got some pictures from our lovely daughter Rachel. These are her new shoes. She's a nurse. Just look at those. They're fabulous. They've got all little icons on, all to do with nursing. She does about 20,000 steps a day nursing. And there they are. Aren't they absolutely fabulous? In fact, the little pictures look like her, don't they? With the hair.
Yeah.
They are amazing. Absolutely love them. Then we went on to Thursday. Busy, busy day. Many of you were with me. I was working with colour in Affinity Publisher, which was usually a 90-minute session turned into a 2-hour one because we were chatting at the end, weren't we? But we had a ball, which takes us on to Friday. 2-show Friday, after 2-show Thursday and 2-show Monday. And we're doing it all again tomorrow with 2-show Saturday. So in 7 days, 4 of those days have had 2 shows on. This really is a miracle, isn't it? Now, I'd love to tell you Lola was helping out, but as you can see, she spent most of the day snoozing while guarding the toilet door. That startled look was when she discovered other folks had need for the very same facilities. She literally shot up and put her head on the wall with, "No, I'm comfortable, go away." But she's gorgeous, isn't she? Now, today is also a very important day in my hometown, which is Manchester. That's the Manchester Bee. And it was adopted as the symbol of basically renewal and hope after the bomb attack of 3 years ago today. So today, lots of people have been posting remembrances of that. And in addition to the rainbows on the windows, you can see people have been putting up bees as well. And that little child there is wearing a Manchester City shirt, but you can see in the window it says Manchester, a city united. And indeed we were after that, and people have put up more pictures of bees there. And apparently, and I didn't know this, Mike, you need to tell me if you knew this, because I did not know this, we're actually going to put up a permanent memorial to those who died, and that's alongside the cathedral. So it's called the Circle of Hope, I believe. So just wanted to mention the fact that I only saw it this week. I had no idea it was something that was coming. But obviously it's been 3 years so far. So just really wanted to mention that all of those people who died are still in our thoughts today.
I used to use the bee today.
What did you use the bee for?
In my Excel course, which was about data visualization, with my bar chart, instead of filling the bars with a car, which I normally do, I decided on a whim just to change the example. And I pretended we were at a software company. And it's the number of bugs that we fixed each day. So I went into the icons and I found the bugs section, because there's actually bugs as one of the categories. And I said I'm going to use a B in memory of all the people that died 3 years ago.
Nice touch. Nice touch.
Just did that on a whim.
So there they are in our thoughts, never forgotten. Now, we are having a holiday. Consider yourself warned. Mike is off work for the next 2 weeks. Obviously, we're not going anywhere, which is a blessed relief for all concerned. Kim is tracking global natural disasters. The locals have gone back into lockdown because there's never a holiday here without incident. Usually quite a calamitous incident. But we're not going anywhere. It's a staycation. That doesn't mean it won't be without incident, because there's always a calamity when we have a holiday, so you have been warned. But we will still be marooned at MacBites headquarters. There will still be MacBites after hours, and maybe 127. You never know. But bar the natural disasters that are bound to occur, you shouldn't notice the difference. Let's just say that. I have no idea where she got those shoes from, Jonathan. I need to ask. But they are just so cool. They could be specially made. I don't know. Interesting anyway. Yeah, I don't know. But they're gorgeous. Right. So let's get on with content. There is a new toy in town. Who signed up for the beta? Who's tried it? It's not with us yet, but it's coming. You can get early access to Photoshop Camera, which is an application for iOS and Android. And it basically turns your camera, it's not a physical thing, it's a virtual thing, it's an app. It turns your camera into a better camera with built-in Photoshop, apparently. So I went off to have a look. As I say, you can pre-order from today. It is due on the 9th of June. Do we have an after hours on the 9th of June? What day is the 9th of June, Mike? If I knew, the first is a Monday, so I'm reckoning it's the Tuesday.
It is the Tuesday.
So we could have a look at it on the Friday show when I get my paws on the final release. What it is intended to do is to provide creative lenses and other tricks. So with that one, it really is very different than an original photograph. You are also supposed to be able to swap skies and create, I mean, basically it's like having Instagram in your pocket, isn't it? The Insta look. Portraits where you can blur the backgrounds. A lens library. So again, it's not physical. What they're doing is taking the best of every physical camera and then enhancing it with an element from Photoshop and calling it Photoshop Camera. So you can change the tones. It's got content aware, so it should be able to work out what it is and how to get the best out of that particular photograph. Then there's scenery where you can put a sky in it, like that in the background on the right-hand side. So it looks pretty amazing. Whether it will be as amazing when we get our hands on it, I have no idea. I also don't know at the moment whether you do this in post or before you take it or while you're taking it, but I'm sure we'll find out. There are plenty of other things similar to it, and of course it's Adobe, so you could be threatening to run away screaming. But don't panic, it's free. As it says, free, but it also says offers in-app purchases. I was actually quite surprised that it only listed one, and that in-app purchase was £1.99, and what it was for was 20 gig, I think, of Creative Cloud storage. I was surprised it wasn't offering the full Creative Cloud experience for an arm, a leg and a kidney, but apparently not. They were just offering extra storage should you actually need it. But other than that, it's completely free. So it's available for iPhone. It is also available on Android, which is good news. Some of the Android phones have the most amazing cameras. And we just have to wait until the 9th to get hold of it. But it's free, so it's always worth a play around with, I would say. So I'll show you that the week of the 9th, which will be the 10th, 12th of June. The MacBites after hours on the 12th of June. There you go. We're working ahead. Now, Notion announced pricing changes this week on Tuesday. Came as quite a surprise, given that they'd already fiddled around with what you could get and what you got and what you didn't get a while ago. And they're in the middle of a lot of development, but it's not all come to fruition yet. So this was pretty radical changes that they announced, and we got talking about it in Slack, and you said, can we take a look at it? So yes, we can take a look at it. If we wind back to last Monday, that was the state of play at Notion. And the biggest roadblock for a lot of people when they came to look at Notion, or even actually adopt it, was the 1,000 block limit. Now, for that to have any meaning, you need to know what a block is. A block in Notion is a unit of content. It could be a photograph, it could be a line of text, it could be a bullet pointed list, it could be anything. All of the block types that they support, like a code block, what else have we got? I'm struggling now. Text is definitely there, bulleted lists, numbered lists, basically anything like that. Any individual item was one block. Didn't actually really matter with a paragraph if it was 1 character or 1,000 characters. It was still a block. There were things you could do to minimise your block usage, but once you hit that 1,000 block limit, it was a case of you needed a personal account to get unlimited blocks. Now, that already had a problem, which you may not have been aware of. If you're looking at that, there is something that screamed out to me, because how I used Notion at the very beginning was, I went in and I thought, you know, everyone's saying this is a good thing. I had a go with it and I thought, no, don't really know where I'm going with that. Then I went back after about 2 months, and taking that sort of Notion holiday, it clicked. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to build it all myself rather than use what's there, because what's there is more of it's like a Lego kit. You literally have to build what you want. But as Kim says, she went through her 1,000 blocks fast. So did I. And I think it was because I started implementing databases. And when you implement a database, it isn't a case of the database is one item and everything in it doesn't count. Everything in it does count. So I had my account and I got Mike to create his account. And then I built a sort of proof of concept of a system for managing MacBites. Now, this was in the autumn of 2018. And as I have said before, without Notion, we wouldn't have MacBites After Hours, because there's no way we'd be able to track it and put it together. It wouldn't work on my post-it note system, I can tell you. The post-it note system is kind of the primary thing, and then it all gets put into Notion. 1,000 blocks was not going to last you long, so their logic was they'd give you enough to try it, and then you'd subscribe to either the personal plan or the team plan. Now, Mike and I started off and we had this 1,000 block limit, but we could be members of a shared workspace, because if you look there under free, you had unlimited members and unlimited guests. The limit on the account was twofold, possibly 3 if you consider a version history. It was the 1,000 block limit was the big one, and then the file uploads of 5 meg. Now, sometimes you could get away with the 5 meg thing, not a problem. But if you're uploading a video of 400 meg, then no. So it could curtail your usage somewhat. But that all got done away with, and they went to this. So now personal is free. And that's free for unlimited pages and unlimited blocks. There is no limit on the amount of content you can create with what is now called the personal account. The personal pro account gives you all of that, but it takes away the limit on the size of the file uploads, which is still 5 meg, and it gives you unlimited guests, whereas the personal one only gives you 5 guests. It also gives you a version history, but here's the game changer. The API access. Now, an API is an application programming interface, and it's how Notion will talk to other applications. So if you wanted to use the calendar in Notion, but have it populated from Google Calendar, it would need an API so the two applications could talk to each other. It's the common language of applications. So that is not going to be available in this new personal account. So they've not actually taken anything away yet, because that was never there in the first place. But now they've got this new pricing structure, they have been able to put it in the Personal Pro one. So that's the personal one, that's the Personal Pro. The team account is where you have people who work together. So instead of them having their own individual private Notion area, there is a shared area. They still have a private area for content they don't want shared with their teams, but they have a team area. And for that, you pay $8 per month per member. And you get everything in Pro, but you get unlimited team members, collaborative workspace, as I've just explained. You get advanced permissions and admin tools, because once you start having multiple people in your account, you need those advanced permissions and admin tools to manage the whole thing. The enterprise level at the end is really only for people the size of AstraZeneca. So I'll leave that out of the equation. So let me know in the chat if that is good, bad, or indifferent. So Neil's saying, so they lifted the block. They did lift the block. There's no limit on the blocks anymore on the free account. Jonathan's saying 5 meg's still quite a lot, because most PDFs and single images can be under that easily. And I agree with you. The one exception for me that I do upload on a regular basis would be things like MacBites episodes, which are usually around 70 to 90 meg. Marooned episodes, again, anywhere between sort of 50 to 90 meg. And if I were uploading after hours shows, probably about 500 meg. So I would definitely stumble with the upload limit. But the rest of it, I agree. If you're not uploading audio and video, you probably wouldn't even feel that limit at all. So is this good news or is this bad news? So let me know in the chat what you think. If you had a personal account and you were paying for it, you should have had an email. You should also have had an email if you had an account that was a free account. And that email will have told you that it's now no limit on the blocks. So give me a heads up in the chat how you feel about that. Is that good or bad? Can some of you now get away with a completely free version? Or are you still willing to pay because you want access to unlimited file uploads, unlimited guests, version history, and the API? So Neil's saying he thinks they want to encourage teams. I agree with you. Obviously, it's a collaborative type of tool. You could use it just you on your own. I have some stuff that I have that I don't particularly need to share with Mike. We noticed this week, laughably, I'd built a system which was an index to all of the sessions that I delivered. So this database is called Live Sessions. And what it was, I call it an index because way back, I used Evernote, and then I moved to OneNote, and I was very reluctant to move my live session. So the live session I did last night, for instance, there's lots of things to manage. You've got links, you've got attendees, you've got content, you've got your running order. There's a lot of moving parts to make that happen. And I had a system that worked in Evernote, and it stayed in Evernote for a long time. Then I moved it to OneNote. But I didn't take everything from Evernote and put it in OneNote. When I moved to Notion, I thought, oh no, now I've got it in 3 places. And I thought, if I'm ever looking for a previous session, I need a single index for it. So I built this single index. We've now discovered, haven't we, Mike, it's going to need to be rebuilt. But it was something that wouldn't necessarily need to be shared. Right, so let's have a look at this. So, Neil saying by hooking individuals to use the app more intensively. So that's pretty much what Dropbox did. It's pretty much what Evernote did. And I totally agree with you. People who have been put off by the block limit, who otherwise would have used it, will probably come back and give it another go. So from that perspective, it makes total sense for Notion. I was looking at it from a user's perspective, and I came to a slightly different conclusion, but let's follow through with what you're thinking. So Jonathan agrees with Neil. They're hoping by giving people access to all of it, they'll drive business sales. True. And Deborah says at $4 a month, if I use Notion, I'd pay for the API and version history. I think I would as well, but there are other things to contemplate with that as well. So Kim didn't get the mail and have a personal account, so you need to look at the API to see if it's still worth paying for. Well, you would get your unlimited file uploads and you would get your unlimited guests, as well as your version history. Whether that is worth $4 a month to you, and like you say, the API is going to depend on what the actual integrations are. For me, integrating with Google Calendar would be amazing. I have used a system called ZenKit, and that does integrate with Google Calendar, and it's fabulous. You can change appointments in your calendar or in ZenKit, and the two are completely in sync instantly. I still have that hooked up, that link between my MacBites admin calendar and ZenKit, just in case I want to work on things together from the MacBites end. But I cannot do that at the moment in Notion. The API has been a long time coming, and I don't think it's going to be coming anytime in the next couple of weeks either. However, these changes they've made are laying the groundwork for it. They needed to separate out Personal and Personal Pro before the API came out, because if they didn't, they'd be taking something away, which I think is a very good business decision. To have that available as coming soon, it was nothing they had that has been taken away. Right, Deb says she didn't get the email but may be able to get the new one free. Absolutely. Paul's looking forward to the API, otherwise I could get away with the free version. Don't worry about the file size limit. And Neil says as an education user he had the original $4 one for free. Haven't looked at what you get now. Well, it's still free for education, but I would guess it would be the Personal Pro or possibly a team one. You'd have to see with that, but I don't think they're going to not give you API access, because again, if you use it as a student when you go off into the workforce, the idea is that you will want to keep it. Right, here's where I think they've made it unfortunate, shall we say. Right, what they don't mention in here, and Paul makes a good point that even if the API came out tomorrow, other programs would need to be updated. Absolutely, I think we're looking at a good few months for that. They have been talking about it for over a year, and I think that's the problem. The other thing they've been talking about for the best part of at least 8 to 9 months is the Gantt chart view, the project timeline view, which would be fabulous. I want that. I want that. And they actually demonstrated it. So it wasn't a concept. There was a video of it. And I thought, once you're at the stage that you show somebody a video of it, it's coming soon. But that was months ago. It was easy 10 months ago. So what I consider the problem to be with what they've done, if what you want is to be what I would term, I must admit, a freeloader, then you're made up. You are made up. If you can get away with the 5 meg upload limit and you have no need for more than 5 guests, you're not concerned about the version history, and you definitely don't need the API access, you are minted. You can get that personal account and you can evangelize, which is what they want for Notion. But there is a problem with this. When I started to use it, Neil's confirmed he's getting Personal Pro on the education, which is what I would have expected, because they're going to want you to use the API and evangelise. But there is a problem with what they've actually done. If we just go back to this slide here, they are focusing that the sole difference is the block limit. But it's not the only difference. Now, the difference that concerned me, and may well have resulted in me not even bothering to try it, which they've not thought about, is if we look above that and we look here, I'll do that one. We have unlimited there, and the unlimited was members and guests. Now, unlimited members meant that Mike and I could join up and create like a team thing. We'd have members in the same area with our 1,000 block limit, and we could build up, we probably used about 500 or 600 blocks, building up a system to prove it worked, proof of concept. At which point, we instantly upgraded to this one. Because, weirdly, if you look at it, it does seem a bit odd if we look across the members bit that we've got here. This is the old pricing, remember, that bit there seems a bit odd. And it seems odd to me because I'm paying them at that point, but people on the free account are getting more than me. It's an either-or situation at that point between the blocks and how many members you've got. Now, I can see a scenario where, let's say we were crowdsourcing for MacBites After Hours 78 next week. I could take a system and I could put it in a shared area with as many members as I liked, as long as I keep the limit, 1,000 blocks. We could all collaborate on it. And then when we come to collaborate on 79, we bin everything out of 78, so we keep below our 1,000 block limit. We could carry on doing that forever, for free. But once you wanted more than 1,000 blocks, you needed to pay. And if you needed multiple team members, you needed to go to the team one, not the personal one. So what that would mean is, let's say we have 100 people collaborating using the free accounts. Everybody's got a free account. And we make sure that on a weekly basis, our 100 people interact with less than 1,000 blocks. It's totally free. That's actually pretty much how Slack works. But the second we need 1,001 blocks, it isn't a case of everybody paying their own $4, because you need one workspace where everybody is a member. And that instantly takes you up to this. And what was free yesterday for less than 1,000 blocks, now you have to pay $800 for per month. So that free level that they used to have, I think I preferred the block limit. Possibly up it to 2,000 or 10,000, but it did mean you could have a lot of members, i.e. unlimited, working with just under 1,000 blocks. That was great for things for non-profits, for charities, for clubs. That was doable. If you didn't want to throw away the blocks at the end of the week, so let's use the example that I've given you with the MacBites thing, I'd just move them into my workspace. I'd take them out of that workspace and then we'd start again the next week. And we wouldn't be paying $800 a month. So what they've actually done, as far as I'm concerned, in regard to that, the changes that they're talking about, we've taken away the block limit, is fantastic. But they're not mentioning the fact that you now only have 5 guests and 0 members. Let's go and have a look at that. It doesn't even mention it, does it? It says 5 guests. I can tell you it's 0 members. The Personal Pro, because Mike and I looked at that, I was like, why would we pay $8 each? Why would we do that? Yeah. When there's one at 4, if you want to have members, unlimited or otherwise, you now have to go for a team account. There is no option to work as a team before you pay for it. Hence, that one's saying try it free. I mean, it says get started for free. You can try the Personal Pro for free. You can try the Teams for free, but you're not really going to get that Teams experience without taking it for a test drive this time. Whereas before, you could have used that for 6 months and then come to the conclusion it was mission critical and you were prepared to pay for it. I am pretty grumpy at paying $8 when the only thing that we get is the ability to work together, when the other one's $4. But worse than that, as far as I'm concerned. The workspace that we do it in, I created it. So I go in when I upgraded and I said, okay, I want 2 members. I end up paying for it. Mike doesn't actually pay. I have to pay for him. That's what the team thing is all about. So let's just come out of there and let's go and find Firefox. The other Firefox, not that one. In here. So Neil's saying, you're right, they tightened up to get the team's revenue. Oh, did they? But they've done it in such a way, the majority of people are still partying because there's no block limit. The rest of us who've actually looked at it carefully have thought, hang on a minute. It has changed in fundamental ways. So this is the price comparison that we've just been looking at. But when you come down and you compare this here, you'll see it's got usage. But the big difference is this bit here, where now on the personal one, it's just you. You can't even test the team features. And if I hadn't tested the team features with Mike, we may never have gone for it. We might have done, we might not. It would have depended. So that is a fundamental change as far as I'm concerned. Also, below that, in the guests one, that used to be unlimited too. And now it's just 5. So although they have made fantastic changes for some people, it's not all roses and chocolates. They've also made some changes there that could impact adoption if you need to test the team features first. Also, you are totally ruling out any kind of teamwork, even with the 1,000 block limit, for clubs and people who would need less than 1,000 blocks. And even if they needed more than 1,000 blocks overall, they might want to just move the blocks out just to try it for a while, because what kind of clubs can afford $800 a month for 100 members? Membership of whatever club it is, like a book club or something like that, where you're putting your comments in. You know, you're well under 1,000 blocks, but there just happens to be 80 of you or 100 of you. And, you know, you're using it in a very limited way in terms of blocks. It's just there's a lot of people. They have not accommodated for that at all. So if that's your situation, you are not going to like the fact that they have taken away the block limit. Everybody is partying that the block limit has gone. The trial, I'm expecting to be 30 days, but don't quote me on that. Does it actually tell you how long the trial is? I don't see a thing. Oh, hang on. Does it do in this? What's a block? Can I delete a block? Student discounts. Come on. Not making it easy. I don't see it. I'd reckon 30 days, but I'm not sure. Might be worth looking at Coda. I'd see how they're pricing it, because like I say, they're trumpeting the fact they've taken the block limit off, and if you are an individual person, you know, like doing it for your genealogy, it's going to be fantastic for you. But if you needed to share that or work in a group, I mean, maybe you're working on genealogy as a family, it would be great to have more than 1,000 blocks, but what they've now done is you can't work as a team, so it's an either-or situation, unfortunately. It doesn't make a jot of difference to Mike and I, because we're on the team plan. So it's nothing changed, nothing to see, move along. But there, I just wanted to point out, it's not all good news depending on how you were actually using it. Now, they are a reasonable company, so if you were using it in that way, maybe you could contact them and talk about different pricing. Maybe they could, on an individual basis, just leave you with 1,000 blocks. Just something to be aware of. Just something to be aware of. So that was the trick with it. That was the bait and switch that you may not have noticed, because I've read lots of articles, I watched a couple of videos, and nobody, I'm sitting there like, and, go on, and nobody's mentioned that. They obviously didn't think it was important, but it could well be a deal breaker for some people. So I wanted you to know about it. Just wanted you to know about it. You'll also see I've got that open up there, which is Microsoft thing. I put this into marooned. This is Office, and it's on offer today at $47.99. So I shall put that link in the chat. If I could see the chat, I would put it in the chat. I'll get it in the chat. I'll just have to do some jiggery pokery with it first. So let's move on and have a look at the next thing. Right, donuts. Kim says there's always a bait and switch. There is, but I admire them for hiding it so well, but I spotted it. It's just a use case, isn't it? It depends how people are using it. They obviously felt that the 1,000 block limit, taking that away, would give them some good publicity, and it will. But if you were sharing, you're not anymore. Right, I got a request this week for donuts. I know what you're thinking. You could all fancy some donuts. What it was, simple question. There are some charts, only they're not really charts, are they? They're kind of infographics expressing certain percentages of things in like a donut shape. So more often, sometimes you see them like that, where they have a percentage in the middle, the bigger percentage. They may also have, as this one has, where the data has labels coming off it with percentages on it. And the person in question wanted to know how you could do that, how you could make those. So let's go and have a look at making those. Oh, there's my Affinity Designer file that I've been working on. My bands file, don't ask about that. It didn't end well, but I think I've saved it and we can go away with it. Right, we'll get rid of that one and we'll start again. Oh, and there's the other one that wasn't working, but I'll save that one as well. Oh, for crying out loud. And then it crashes on me. Come on, even had you ready and waiting, didn't I? Right, you're back. Good. Right, so I'll make a new file. I will make that standard slide size. This is the first way to do it. It's fairly straightforward. You have tools down here, and one of them is a donut chart. Donut tool. So there's your donut. Hold the shift key down and pull it out so you get the donut the right size. And you have a donut chart. It's not very exciting, I'll grant you. And it's pretty limiting in what you can do with it. But you will see you have two red dots there. Two red dots. One on the inner edge, one on the outer edge. And when I hover over it, you get a line on it. And that allows you to make the hole in the middle bigger or smaller. So if you have it like that, it's kind of looking more like the chart that we're trying to emulate. You also here have that one. And when you hover over that one, you get a totally different arrowhead. So it's got two arrows on it at a right angle. What that will enable you to do is this, which is actually draw out your percentage. So far, so good. You can do all of that. This middle bit is actually transparent. So if we get a circle on it, and I'm trying to get it to twang. Are you going to twang? You're not going to twang. Fair enough. What size is this one? That is 400 and that is 420. So I'm going down here and I'm going to change that to 400, and now they are the same. So I can put that there, obviously now not seeing it, but if I push it to the back, so if you look in the layers, it's now behind it, and we change the colour, so we could definitely do with something a little bit more exciting than grey. That's what you get, but still not right, because you can see the yellow and it looks like it's bleeding out of the edge. So all you actually need to do is get another circle, changing the colour of that. So we're going to make it pink while we have a look what we do with it, but you put it in the middle, and you could fiddle to make it just the right size so it covers up the yellow, but there is an easier way to do it than that, which is if you click on that one again, you have these two red points, and now I don't have to worry about it. Just put that one in the middle so it lines up with the other one, make it white so it's the paper colour, and you have replicated that. The last thing you would need to do is to put a number in it. So if we were to say that that was 82%, there's the percent. And then all you need to do with it is give it a nice colour and move it into the centre of that. And you should When you get it in the right spot, there, I think that's about right. I'm looking for both. There we go. It's in the middle. So that's one way to do it. You've got problems doing it this way though, because this shape, which is actually the grey shape, which is giving you the shape of the donut. So let's go draw out another donut. You can alter this as we've seen. Let's put some colour in it. And you can do this. So you can move all of these. Make it like Pac-Man. Like that. Problem is trying to be accurate with it. As you move it, you can see it does twang. So there's a right angle, actually telling you it's a right angle. And keep going, and it will, there you go. You get a green line telling you that's 180. And it's telling you that it's equal as you move it round. But it's not precise. I can't guarantee that it's 82%. But just to show you that if you don't have anything else, you can actually do that in Affinity Designer. Best thing you could do when you've sorted it all out, of course, is to group it together with Command and G, which is Control and G on a PC. And then you have a shape and you can drag it around. And you can scale that for whatever you need. And of course, you could take that and you could put it in your presentation. So let's get back in there, but come out of it. Where's it gone? Come on, Keynote. I want to bring you on screen. There we go. So let's take that across. There's our black slide. Behind it, we have that. So I'm going to take that. Now, I could export it, obviously. And the mouse pointer's disappeared. Don't start. Don't start. Literally, the mouse pointer has disappeared. This is a known issue with my Mac. I actually have to go back to the Finder to activate it again. So I'm just going to copy that and then take that into there and paste it in. And it pastes in as a PDF. So it's a vector image and I can still scale it in here. So that's one way to do it. Is that the best way? Probably not. Probably not. But we'll move this to one side and get that out of the way. It's just one way to do it. I would do it that way if it was very simple, if it was more of a representation than something that needed to be accurate. What's the other limitation with that? Who's watching that and can think, hang on a minute, there's another limitation? And there is. There's a huge limitation with that. Apart from the fact, I mean, it's a vector graphic, so it will scale. That's not the problem with it. But one, I couldn't be very precise, so I wasn't. I just thought, well, it's 82% and that looks about right. That's one issue with it. I can go in and edit it, and I can change that in such a way so I can move the yellow bar. I can move the yellow bar. Come on. So the yellow part I could have up there. Right, can't easily make another one and change the percentage. Well, you could change it like this, Jonathan, and then just go in and actually change that and say that that is 75%. You could, of course, use the symbol system, etc., but it's just not perfect. And the other thing to think about is, what is it you're actually trying to show? You're saying it's 75%, right? Therefore, the yellow bit is therefore 25%. But what if you wanted to show three things? It's doable, but it's messy. Let me show you that it is actually doable, though. So I still want my 75%, but let's say that this yellow bit needs to be split between... So 75% of our students got an A, and 12% got a B, and 13% got a C. You need to represent that. Now it starts getting complicated. It's doable, because you have your donut there. So if you duplicate your donut with Command and J, and then rotate that, so it's about halfway, and then put it behind the other one. Now you may wonder why I'm doing that, so let me do this first. I'll make that red. Now that's on the front. We don't want that. We want it behind the grey one. Now I have got three parts to that donut, but boy is that messy. If we look at that, that's not equal, is it? So I would have to do this and take it back a bit, and I'm eyeballing it. is what it boils down to. I'm just eyeballing it. But it could be done. But at this stage, it starts to get complicated with, do you know what? There's a better way to do it. And there is a better way to do it. But that's just the way that if you would do it, if you were doing it in a design application. If you have Illustrator, Illustrator can do amazing things, but it's completely unfathomable. So I'd stay away from that myself because there are better ways to do it. But that is one way to do it. So I'm going to minimise that. Right. Let me know in the chat. Quick poll. How many of you make presentations with Keynote? And how many with PowerPoint? So put in Keynote or put in PowerPoint. And if you use something else, put that in. I know somebody not a million miles away who actually, in anger, used Google Slides, didn't you?
Yes, I was quite angry.
You were angry because the others just didn't work right, did they?
It's the Mac.
Why is Windows any better?
Because if you don't want to use Speaker View, which I didn't, then it leaves your other screen totally blank.
Right, he's grumpy. He was grumpy. Well, yes, maybe, Mike, but that isn't the case, is it? So needed an alternative. So maybe you use Google Slides. Jonathan hates PowerPoint. Must admit, I'm not a great fan of PowerPoint myself. However, let's do the PowerPoint thing first. Google Slides. There's Neil with Google Slides. I spotted a person doing a presentation with Google Slides in anger the other day, other than Mike. But it was education. So Google, obviously big in education. Right, so this one is PowerPoint. So how would you set about this in PowerPoint? We're pretty even at the moment. We've got Mike with both, and then we've got Jonathan with Keynote, Neil with Slides, and Kim with PowerPoint. But Google Slides is something he wants to use more.
Does anyone use PowerPoint on iOS?
That's a good point, isn't it? I'm coming on to that, Peter. I'm coming on to that. All right, so we'll have a look at what this can do, and it can do it in two different ways. So let me change that first so it's blank. You have in here nice shapes. You have the circle shape. And I'm not kidding now. PowerPoint does have nice shapes. You also have in here, let's open up all of these. You even have the Pac-Man one. And let me see, down in here, did I do a donut? There, I think, is the donut. Right. So we're pretty evenly spread here. Right, so what you've got in here is the different ways to do it. So you could start this way with putting stuff on here and having things behind it, but no, let's not do that. We've actually got this donut shape, and again, you can make that bigger, and you could do it that way, but you would still have problems trying to get just the right shape in just the right bit. But just to show you in here that you do actually have this shape. And this shape is the useful shape. Hello, Paul. Only done PowerPoint in a Windows Office environment. Nothing wrong with that. I started with that. And I do like the way as I scale these, I get those red arrows telling me all about that. So I can put these behind them. I can basically build it up. But that's pretty decent in here. So what I would do with that is then get another circle. So let's draw another circle on, slightly smaller than the first one, and give it a different fill. Put that over the top. Needs to be a little bit smaller than that. Now, obviously, if that's going to be the middle bit, are you going to line up for me? Come on, that's it. If that's going to be the middle bit, that needs to be white. So in the shape fill, I will fill that as white. And that might look like it's all blue, but hopefully I've grabbed the back one, and I'm going to give that one a different fill. And that is how you would replicate the thing in PowerPoint. But this is still not the best way to do it. But this is the way I see people try and do it. So if you just wanted it as a representation and you're not bothered about it being accurate to the last percent, then you can create shapes. However, Keynote. Living nightmare. If we look in the shapes, it would be much more difficult because we have a circle, but there's no donut. So it would be awkward in here. The shapes are much better than they have been in the past, but they are still nowhere near as good as they actually need to be to make this thing usable. So, which one should I start with? I'll start with Keynote, doing it the right way in Keynote. So I'll put another slide in and we'll make that white to get going with. And this is the right way to do it. So Stephen's saying he uses deck set with a superb markdown to simple text-based presentations. I think I have seen that. I think I tested it once. My problem is my presentations tend not to have much text in. Lots of graphics, but not much text. So I didn't really get the best from it. Neil's saying I get lots of PowerPoints, open them in Google Suite and edit them in G Suite so we can use the shared drive rather than the OneDrive one. Tell me about it. OneDrive. Sharing is a bit ropey. Right, let me close this down so I've got more of a slide, and I'll also take that down so we've got more of a working area. There we go. Right, so the right way to do it that will give you the most control is actually, and Stephen's saying no shapes or fancy stuff in deck set. You might not need it. And I have been known to go and create something in PowerPoint and then stick it into Keynote. I live and breathe Keynote, so I fly around it. I did actually contemplate, I got so annoyed with it over one thing and I can't remember even what it was. I'll take this and I'll put it in PowerPoint, and I ran away screaming in the end. Only because it's not that PowerPoint isn't very good, it's just that I'm not up to speed on it enough globally. I can hone in on, right, I can do that in PowerPoint and then take it into Keynote, but you need to be really immersed in an application to be ultimately fast in it. And with that one, I wasn't. So I thought, right, how are we going to do this and how are we going to be accurate and how are we going to make it editable and that anybody could use it? And it's really simple. Instead of playing around with the shapes, forget that. If you go into your charts in here, you have a whole range of charts, including a pie chart, and next to it, you have a donut chart. So click on that, and now you've got a proper chart. That is 35%. The green is 29%. The red is 10%. It's spot on accurate. And it's literally just there. Now, obviously what I wanted was 82%. And that's not what that's doing. But I do have underneath edit chart data. So if I click on that, it helpfully opens it on another window. But there you go. There's the chart data. Has the colour at the top. It has the fact it's April and the fact it's region 1 and the actual numbers in there. But I only need 82% and 18%. So what on earth am I doing here? Because, you know, the blue is 91, but I want it as a percentage. Well, actually, it's much easier than you would think. What I don't need are any of these. So if I just put in 0, keep putting 0 in, they'll literally disappear before your very eyes. And that's still a percentage. But if in the blue one I said that was 82, and you're thinking, no, it's gone to 52. It's gone to 52 because it's added the numbers together and then created a percentage from them. But if I just said that was 18, it would add up to 100 and I'd have my 82%. And I don't even need to delete the other ones. Right, so that's worked okay. Another thing I can do in here, there's a drop down. You can actually insert before, you can delete columns. So I could actually go and delete that column completely if you wanted to tidy it up. But if you think you might want to add them back in, then you could just leave it where it is. So I now have my donut. It's not quite right because I've got my 18% over here and I've got my 82 down here. That's because it's actually a genuine chart that's editable for you to go in and make changes with it. You also, because it's a chart, in the formatting, now have an extra thing. Instead of it just being shapes, it's a chart. And here you can put the title on it. you can put the legend at the top, which obviously we don't want. We definitely don't want that. But you do have the title. So you could actually go in there and the title's ready for you to put in 82%. If you wanted to do it that way as the title. You can even in here change the colour. So we'll have it a blue colour. In fact, we'll have it a little bit lighter than that. And we'll make it bigger as well. And the beauty of doing it this way is it's in the right place and it's self-contained. Grab that, you move the lot. So, doing okay. Still have a bit of an issue though. Don't need the 18% and the 82 hanging off the edge. Well, this was all about the chart itself. It's about the legend, the title, where the title is. It's about the chart font. It's all about the overall chart, including what colours it actually has. Like this. And we were on the first one. Now that does have an impact. When you apply a chart style, you'll see the 82% has gone back in terms of size and colour. So if you do make changes, make sure you're sort of at the point that you finished. Right, but when I select that, you also can go more detailed than that. So if you go over to segments, you have an option for labels. So the data points could have their names or not, or their values or not. And just doing that, now you've got exactly what you want. But it's also spot on accurate. So the other example that I gave, if we go back into the chart data, if we were saying that they were A students and these were B students and these were C students, and we had 75% on an A and we had 12 on a B and 13 on a C, there you go. So you can go in and change that as well. Right, so now we've got 3 points in, and we wouldn't want that to say that anymore, would we? We want to say we had 75% A grade students. I'm trusting that's about average, Neil. Maybe not. Maybe not. Right, so these are the individual segments themselves that we've got in here. So you can see I can actually grab that individual segment, or the green one, or the gold one. Now in here, you've got your data points, so I've got one selected. I could actually put the labels on just for that one and just the values for that one by selecting it first. You're only applying it to an individual segment of the chart. I can also change the distance of that. So they're the C students. We want those away from the others. They might pollute them. You can actually move it away from the centre. You can do that at a different distance for each individual piece if you want. It still moves around as a group. It's just you are controlling how that actually works. So I'll go back in and I'll put these segments back where they belong before we lose them. Right, let's drag them back in. The third option you have in here is to actually style the individual segments themselves. So if you're quite happy with the gold and the blue, but the green, no, it needs to be something else, then you can do that on an individual basis. You just need to make sure you've drilled down and you have actually selected the individual piece itself. And that way you can size them, scale them, do whatever you want with them, and line them up in 3 like we did in the sample. So the sample was like that one or that one. And we've got this. Now, it may well be the one thing I couldn't find something to change, which was a bit of a pain, is it this one? That's it. There it goes. So if I wanted it a little bit narrower, so it looked more like the other one, then you change the inner radius and you're good to go. You can then, of course, if you're doing a comparison, maybe between 3 schools. Let's get that one lined up in the centre and move that one. So the data's going to be different for each one, obviously. But you can just go in here and actually change that. So let's say with that one, there was 50 on that, and then 25 on that, and 25 on that. Obviously, you do have to put that in the middle if you are doing that. And the third school, oh, they're in special measures. They've got 10% who had an A, and 40% who had a B, and 50% who had a C. And in there, it was 10%. There we go. But you did that really quickly, and you retained the custom colours because you actually duplicated the thing. So that is the right way to do it. Now, if we look back at the other example here, that did not have anything like a title in the middle. It's got icons in the middle. That is also fairly simple to do. So let's duplicate that slide. And all we actually need to do that is to click on the chart to select it. And you'll remember we had the option to show the title. So what we would do is we would turn that off on all of them. And we'd go and find the type of icon we want. Oh, shopping. I definitely need a shopping icon. And just put the icons in the middle. You can, of course, change the icons, edit them, merge them, whatever you need to do. So there's a shopping tag one. Prices going up. And what should we have for the last one? Oh, yes, the piggy bank, because we're going to need lots of those, aren't we? Right, and lots of content. And you can, of course, format those in any way you would like. So if we wanted them to be that colour, or we wanted them to be a totally different colour, grey might work. There we go. And you've now replicated that, which looks like an infographic rather than a chart, but you've used a chart to do it, and you've retained the editability of the thing if you need to make changes with it. So I would say that is actually the right way to do it. Now, that worked well in Keynote. Then I moved on to PowerPoint. PowerPoint wasn't actually as bad as I feared, was it, Mike? After an initial where on earth's that? And how's that working? So let's get a new slide down there to work with. And you go to Insert, and you've got lots of things in here that you could actually insert, but one of them is a chart. So it works in a similar way. Obviously, the interface is very different. But you do have pie charts, and when you go to pie charts, you do have a donut chart. So you can insert the donut chart. Go on. Today, preferably. And this is why PowerPoint annoys me, but never mind. Right. Again, you've got pre-configured styles that you can apply to it, which is turning on and off certain elements. We'll stick with this simple first one. We still have the problem, too much information. Far too much. But you can make selections with it. Now, with a chart, you drill down. So the first thing would be the title. So I can go in and I can actually change that. So this could be results. But what I wanted to do was start turning things on and off. And my friend in PowerPoint is the right click. If I don't know where something is, it'll be like, I'll just right click on it. And you can, and there is an option to delete it, but I don't think that's actually the way to go. So I said to Mike, these chart things, I'm figuring they were very similar to Excel. And you do have chart elements up here, and you can toggle them on and off. So at the minute, it's above the chart. If you want it in the centre, you could put it in the centre. Centred over, like, what are you doing? Come on. Why are you not working properly? Where's the format of my chart gone? Right, element. Centre it in an overlap. Mike, it's not moving. That should be moving. I have no idea why it's not moving, because when I did the none, it disappeared. So it should definitely hover over the middle, but it's not doing. And the other thing that I don't particularly want is the data labels. So I'll turn those off as well. And finally, we've got the legend at the bottom, and I don't want that either. But this still isn't showing me, you know, I've got default data coming from somewhere, and I only actually needed 3 data points. You can, when you go in there, edit the data for the chart in Excel. And I think I double-clicked it. Maybe I didn't double-click it, but you can edit the data in Excel. And what it's doing in there, that's virtually useless, isn't it? I need to zoom that in. It's showing me what you've got. Column 1 with sales. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 4 data points. I'm going to put these in as results. So let's put results in there. I don't particularly need these quarters, but you know, we had A, didn't we? And we had B, and we had C. We did not have any data in this one here. Now, I can delete it, and let's take a look behind. That actually works. You need to think about this funny thing that Mike probably knows the name of. What's that funny thing in the corner, Mike? It's defining an area, isn't it? So if I was to drag that up, it should change the chart area to just that bit. And if I want to add more in, I need to grab hold of it again. And I'm not having much luck this time. There we go.
Called a little thing in the corner.
A little thing in the corner. That's a
what I
technical
call it.
term.
That's what I call it.
It's probably an extender handle or something posh. Little thing in the corner. But I only want 3 data points, so I'm going to drag that up. That marks the end of my chart data. And up here where it says column 1, well, that would actually be grade, wouldn't it? Right, so it's got my data in Excel. It's rippled straight through into my chart. But I've still got 4 data points. So I'm going to save it, and hopefully my other data point will vanish. Needless to say, Mike, it's not vanishing, nor is it actually saving. And this worked perfectly in rehearsal. Go on. My autosave's off, but I'm trying to save it. Save. No, I don't need to do any of that. I just want it to do it, update it. Oh, come on. Seriously? Let me get my chart again and try again. Right, edit the data. There's the data. It's not doing it. That should automatically be updating. I have no idea why it's not. It should be. Let me see if I can turn on the chart elements and if we have at least those rippled through. Yep. So we know that it's connected. Let's put it down the bottom. There's our A, our B and our C. So we know it's connected. It's just got... Oh, no, it has got 3. We're all right. We've got A, B and C, haven't we? So it's fine. Thought there was 4 there. Never mind. Can't even see straight anymore. Right, so it's worked. Obviously, we wouldn't, in reality, want these on, but you could if you wanted. Let's see if we can get that. Centred. Chart title. Centre. Oh, we haven't got an option for in the middle, have we? Not good. Okay, I'll turn them off. And then we've got our donut chart, which we can then do things with. So if you did actually want that bang over the middle, you would need to put a text box on there, draw that in, and that one's results. Put your title in it, format it at will. That is a hideous colour. Let's make it like that. Grab that and put that where you need it, like that. And you're done. So the right way to do it is not really to think of it as an infographic that's giving you a vague idea. The right way to do it is to use a chart and put it in as a percentage. And that way you can duplicate, change it, and it's really quick to do. Whereas the other way you'd need to, as you saw, add extra elements in and painstakingly move them around. So Doughnuts and presenting in PowerPoint and Keynote with Doughnuts. So that way I can close it down because my poor machine is starting to explode. Right, but don't close that one down because that's my actual presentation. So we'll get that one up and then we can see them presented. There we are. That's what we did. There's the percentages and there's the ones with the little graphics in. So, well, hopefully that was useful. Right, catching up on the chat again. Stephen says, I understand I do the opposite. Loads of text, occasional pictures, all created using markdowns in the ways you taught a few weeks ago. Yeah, I really love the idea. And I started looking at it and I thought, what are you doing? There's hardly any text on the slides. What I do is I give out like the background information as a slide document, basically, and use the slides as just something there maybe to focus on rather than the actual information. But everybody works differently. Everybody works differently. I've seen people actually write manuals in Keynote and PowerPoint. Do you remember that girl that wrote that manual in PowerPoint? And I thought that takes some doing because there's no flow from the text from one slide to the next. So making changes would have been a nightmare. But hey, she wanted it laid out in that orientation and she obviously didn't know how to do that in Word. And that was what she did. Right, moving on. Virtual clapperboard. This was something I mentioned last week. It was in relation to audio, I think, at the time, of how we keyed the audio up. What on earth was I demonstrating, Mike, that would have necessitated... who can remember what I was talking about last week? It was something to do with keying the audio up, I know it was. Not sure. But I said I used a virtual clapperboard. Now, obviously, a clapperboard tends to be physical. And I actually do have one of those. I've got more than one of them. Initially, it was like, oh, a clapperboard. And then I thought, what are you doing? You know, you don't do talking head video. You have no need for a clapperboard. But, you know, I had my YouTube cushion in my studio, so I needed a clapperboard to go with it. I think I've now got about 3 or 4. I've got a clapperboard fetish. But the idea with the clapperboard is it serves 2 purposes, audio and visual. So audio-wise, to get a sync between multiple devices recording your audio. Oh, I know what it was. It was that thing that you did with the talking head and we were trying to make sure it was synced. That's right. So we said we'd do a clap. And that is actually one way to do it. If you're just doing audio, just clap or just make a noise, a spike that you can see on the audio. And that looks like that. So you would be looking for a spike. The alternative way of doing it is don't say anything. So it's flatline. And that way, when you come to edit audio, Mike looks at me strangely when I'm editing audio because I say to him, I can't see it. And if I can't see it, I can't edit it. And he's like, but you've got your headphones on and you're listening to it. And I said, I still can't edit if I can't see it. And occasionally ScreenFlow would lose the plot and you would not be able to see the audio. And that was hugely problematic, but it was at a time when it was probably pushing the boundaries of what a Mac could do. And I had to come up with a workaround, and that was the workaround that I actually came up with. So, back to the clapperboard. The top part makes the noise. That gives you, in essence, the clap. But the visual part, obviously, if it is a TV programme or a movie, or you're doing talking head video for YouTube, it's not a bad idea to have a clapperboard because there are actual information on there that will help you. And what you do is that goes in front of the camera, obviously for more than a split second. It doesn't need to be there for 20 minutes, but it needs to be there long enough so somebody in the edit suite can press pause and read it. And then they know what is following that clapperboard. Who the director is, what the camera was, what the date was, what the scene was, what the take number was. And then that's all true until the next time they see the clapperboard. That's the idea of it. So I thought that's a good idea because you can record a YouTube video, trust me, I've done it, about 20 minutes. And when you come into the edit, you're 2 minutes in and you've forgotten that was a mistake. And then you edit it and you think, oh, hang on, I needed to take that out. So by having a visual clapperboard, I can go in and do a lot of recordings and know which one each is for. I did mention that I try not to record more than one video on one recording because it's very difficult to find them. But that's where my virtual clapperboard comes in. And that's what it looks like. I'm prepared to change it, but at the moment that works. So what I actually did, I created it, and it's quite different than, a talking head one because I need different information. But I have a location, so it's either the office or the studio. That's where it's being recorded. The next thing I need to know is what resolution the screen is. So most of the time when I do my recordings, I'm at 1600 by 900, but it's a Retina display. So my actual recording when I finished is double that. That enables me to, even though it was 1600 by 900, create a video that is 1920 by 1080 and not lose quality. The next thing I need to think about is what audio I need recording. In a way, this helps twofold. One, afterwards, I know exactly what it is that I'm looking at, but also at the point of creating it, I have to go in and fill this in. So if I'm putting in, I need the loopback pipe and I need the system audio, and I've forgotten to put the tick in the loopback pipe, I go and do it at that moment. The top right-hand corner is the take number. I'd love to tell you everything gets done here in one take, but I couldn't do that, could I, Mike? Because I'd be lying. Although Mike has been known as One Take Thomas.
Not today.
No, but it was only 2 takes. You were way better the second time. But I do put a take number in the corner, and if I'm sort of 5 minutes in and I decide I'm going to redo the whole thing, then that would be take 2 from the top. Other than that, I can make the text smaller and actually put more information in. But by putting it in here at the point of recording and just flashing it up on the screen, my video recording software that's recording the screen, it's a screen recording solution, actually captures it. And it's in my video. The only other way I would be doing that is I'd be having a pen and writing down time codes as I'm trying to do it, and then looking back at that later. So no, I stopped doing that. Just do it this way. The course title is obviously, as the name implies, the course title. I've then got a video reference. Now the video reference could be like module 1, video 3. It could have the title of the video in, it's just whatever references it is. Software at the bottom is normally I'm demonstrating some software, so I would put the details of that in there. And you can put as much information in here as you want. I've got those quite big so that it just at a glance I can see exactly what it is, but you could make it smaller and put more information in. It's really however it works for you. Then I've got the frames per second, and I tend to stick to 30. When I'm recording, because it's screen recording. It does not need to be 60 frames a second. But I do produce it out to 60 frames a second, so I upscale it on the output because YouTube likes 60 frames a second, but I don't like file size of 60 frames a second. It also makes it a little bit trickier to edit it. You've got double the length to fiddle with. Then I put the date, and I put the date in what I call sort order. So 2020, the year, then the month, then the day. Then I've got underneath, it says Rec app, which is the recording app, and it's going to be ScreenFlow or Camtasia. Camtasia's at the top because that's more what I use now, to be honest. But I could also put in there like Audio Hijack. I don't particularly do that because I've got the audio at the top, but I could do. Then I've got the bits in grey, which is Screen, Camera, iOS or iPadOS. And what that is, how I would work it, I would change the colour of it if I'm recording it. I very seldom bother with a camera. I wouldn't notice if my camera wasn't working for years and years. I find it distracting in videos, but a lot of people do talking head. So I would recolour that. Deborah says, I wish I could persuade the rest of the world to use sort order dates in file names. Oh, I did that years ago. And I said to Mike, I like the way America does it, where the months first, because that kind of makes sense. It sorts nicely, but I need it by year as well. And that's what we use all the time. I actually have a Typinator shortcut. I put section key D and it puts that date in. And that's what I did with it today. But those 4 in the corner, I colour them. I make them red if I'm recording that. And that's so they're all there, but I just colour up which ones I'm using, and it's usually the screen, and maybe it's iOS on a phone, or maybe it's iPadOS, one or the other. Right, but how do I do that? That's what it looks like, but how do I do that? All right, let's come out of here. I actually have the file that I use. In fact, you could actually see it in there, but I'll show it you in the proper one, which is in here. Working with the finish. Oh, it's not listed, for crying out loud. Okay, we'll do it in there. Because I actually put it in here. So let's fold up these. Done these. Right, that is actually inside Keynote. There's bits of it I can edit on the slide, and there's bits of it that I can't. If you look at the top right-hand corner, it says it's using a master of Clapperboard course. I've just discovered the other one. Right, so that is one template that I have, a master slide, if it's a course. Now what I'm going to do now I've found the original, sat right in front of my face. There's the other one, so let's get that taken down. This is the one that this is my master copy that I take it down from. Same principles, everything's in there. But I have 2. So this is my Clapperboard for the course, but if I'm doing a YouTube video, this is the one. So Clapperboard YouTube. And the difference is it doesn't have a course title, it has a video title. The rest of it is fairly similar, to be honest. That's the main difference. But how I would actually use this is like this. So I'd start off and say I'm going to do a YouTube video. So let's duplicate it and actually do it. Where am I going to record it? Probably the office. That's definitely... Now, the reason that things are getting recorded in the office rather than the studio, which, why have a studio when you're not using it? It doesn't have a Retina Mac in it. So it's fantastic for audio. It's brilliant for audio. But it doesn't have a Retina Mac, which gives me problems when I come to produce the video. So 9 times out of 10, I'll do it in the office. So this is right, the Retina thing. That is exactly the audio that I would record, but I need a title. So if I was going to do the Mac OS Color Picker as the title, now that would actually fit, so that's fine. That's the title of it. Then I can put in some kind of video description. In this circumstance, it wouldn't need much. But what I could do with that, make it better, is make that smaller and then actually something like, 36 points. And I can actually put a longer description in of the video. Then I've got my software. Well, my software would be macOS. It is take one. It won't be by the time I've finished. And let's say I'm doing it today. I'm going to record it in Camtasia. So then I delete ScreenFlow and just leave Camtasia sat there. I'm going to need the screen, so go into there and change the text colour. Do I have it red or green? No, I think I have it red. I just don't think the green's bold enough. Would I be using iPad? No, I wouldn't. So I just need the screen. Then what I do, I would have in Keynote a presentation that I would use for a video. And what I do is I put that at the beginning of it. And then whenever I go in to do the video, I do that and I just leave that on the screen for a couple of seconds. At the same time I do that. And that's get my audio and video keyed up. And then I move on and I present the rest of the slides. So if we lose that one, let's save that and lose it. What that would look like in here, if I moved it to the other side of there, I would go into it, I would leave it on the screen for a couple of seconds, do that, and then move on and start talking and presenting. When I make a mistake, and there will be a mistake, right, what I would tend to do, move back to it, but I'm going to have to come out of it because then I'm going to need to mark that up as this is take 2. Now, obviously, my software is still recording. But I still give myself that couple of seconds because when I'm whizzing through it, I'm doing lots of things, but that's static. And I would leave it there for sort of 5 seconds or so. And then I carry on. Carry on with exactly where I was. I might whiz through some slides to get back to where I was and then carrying on. Right, so what's going on down here? Jonathan really needs to think of getting Camtasia. But Jonathan, you have... Now, if you're going to buy, now is a good time to buy because they've literally just brought out a new version. If you buy the new version and you take the maintenance on it, you will only ever pay maintenance. The next version will be due out on the 28th of April next year, which would be included with your maintenance. So you'd get 2 brand new versions for the price of one and your maintenance, which is about £43. But don't forget, you've got Setup, and Setup has Capto. Capto's actually pretty good. It's not as good in the editing area, but it's pretty good at recording. It does a really good job of recording. Another option for you, Jonathan, if you are not in a rush for it, is to wait till Black Friday, at which point, as a purchaser, a new purchaser, rather than an upgrader, you would get a discount. It would be somewhere between 20 to 40%. They do it every single year, but you would need to wait a couple of months for that. Now, haven't they at the moment put... I think there's an extended free trial at the moment because of the COVID thing, which is worth looking at as well. But I don't think they're going to go into Setup anytime soon. So if it's Camtasia you were looking at, not going to go in Setup. You heard it here. I really don't think it would. Right, Deborah has been enjoying getting to know Camtasia, being a ScreenFlow user, and you now use both depending on the project. That's pretty much where I'm at. Let me get the back to there. I deliberately, the other day, twice, needed to use ScreenFlow. And this is when I start grabbing a pen and my post-it notes and start writing down, Camtasia needs to do this. One of the things that ScreenFlow does is record multiple screens. The other is it has a timer on it. And I needed to do a recording overnight and then have it turn off. So I'd set up a video to record, and it was a process that was going to take like 2 hours. And I didn't need to sit and watch it. But I did need the thing to turn off after 3 hours. And Camtasia can't do that, but ScreenFlow can. So that was when I used that one. So Neil's still to be sold on Capto. The problem with Capto is I've not found it buggy, but I don't use it to that degree. The video it recorded was pin sharp. It was beautiful video. It was when it came to the edit that there was a problem. If I was going to edit it and I had to record it in Capto, I'd edit it somewhere else. I'd export it and do it that way. So Deborah says, ScreenFlow's got the audio scrub, big thing for me. That drives me insane. I hate that. I have to turn it off. It annoys Mike when I'm editing. So I tend to turn that off. I did hear on, and I haven't looked into, I'll go back and have a look, Deborah. Because we looked at that, I had a look for you and it wasn't there. But I have heard that in the tutorial video, this guy went back and there was an audio scrub, and somebody asked the question, that's not working in mine, how do you do the audio scrub? So I'll go back and have a look at it, see if there's any more information on that. So for under 100 I'd be in, but the initial price is a little high right now. It's $99, Jonathan, if you get it from the App Store, but the problem with the App Store is you don't get the Windows version, which you may or may not need to use in a VM, and you don't get the maintenance option in the future, so in the long run it would work out more expensive. But yes, it is a hefty investment, I'll grant you, and you have spent a little bit of money lately, haven't you? So Neil's using CleanShot as a screen grabber and it does a good video capture. Obviously for what I do, it's video all day, every day, literally. Camtasia's hardly ever stopped on my machine, I'll be honest. It's recording right now, obviously, huge, long videos. So, which is just as well, because, you know, YouTube have their moments, as Neil will remember from 64, that needed reprocessing, which was reprocessed. And I pretty much record everything. Even if I'm buying some software, I'll record it. If I'm buying an Audible book, I'll record it because I don't trust them and I have needed to use it. So I get my money's worth out of it, but there is that initial pain point, I will grant you. They are incredibly good at supporting user groups, though, and they actually gave it to us free, didn't they, Mike?
They did.
When we ran our Adobe group. So we got all their software for free and we were able to just upgrade it as it came out. So we like them. We like them for that. Right, okay, let's get on and get the other side of that. Right, freebies. You ready, Mike?
Freebies.
Coming up after the freebies.
Yeah.
Right, I've got new freebies this week. These are on offer until the 29th of May 2020. There's 3 of them. There is this one, which is... it's like an intro where you can edit the dates and stuff on it and the text. And it's for After Effects, which I'm guessing not many people have got, but it's free, usually $20. There's a logo ident. So this is an audio-based one. Mike's putting the links in for these right now. It's very short, that one. But it's a nice little sort of bing bong logo. A video ident. I could see that, an audio ident. I could see that working on Brooklands. Let's just say that. And the third one is a whole LMS system for WordPress. So it's school management, education and learning management system for WordPress. It's got a lot of 5-star reviews. I love the artwork for it too. So at the moment, that's completely free. It is for WordPress, so you would need a WordPress site, but you can get a WordPress site completely free. So you could have a dabble with it, and that's usually $35. The last thing I have for you is an entire course called Mastering the Art of Script Lettering. Would that I would be able to do that. But it looked a little bit long-winded for me, I must admit.
Which I don't have the link for.
Did I not put that in there,
Shall
Mike?
I go and Google it?
I did think I put that in. Maybe I didn't.
There it is.
Right, excellent. Well, you find it and put it in, Mike. Right, and then we're coming on to, I think this is part 4, isn't it?
Just a minute.
It's all right, I'm talking. Calm down. He's getting all excited because he's looking at Access. But not only Access, not your father's Access. Oh no, Access VBA. VBA being Visual Basic for Applications. VB, Visual Basic, is a totally separate language. VBA is the version of it that's included with all of the Office applications, or at least Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access. There isn't much in the way of OneNote, is there? But the main applications all have VBA built into them, and you can use them to automate all kinds of things. Mike and I were actually talking about a thing that I created called Grapple. And it was an old problem. I don't know if anybody's experienced this. It was a long time ago. But there was a version of Word, and you put graphics in it, and then all of a sudden, they all disappeared, and they got replaced with a huge red cross. And there was no way to recover the file. You had to put the graphics in again. Well, I got sick of that fast. So I built an entire system in VBA to allow me to insert the graphics, remove the graphics, and then re-put the graphics in. And I did that as a demo once, a long time ago. I don't know if the application still works, but boy, it made Word run 10 times faster, because I was writing 300-page manuals and it was crawling. But if I took the graphics out, toggle the graphics off, it ran 10 times faster. And then I went back in and then put the graphics back in. It was fabulous. And that used VBA, which Mike is about to show you now. Are you ready now, darling?
Yes.
Have you finished playing in your half? If you don't know what a half is what an actor has at the beginning of just before a play. And they have 30 minutes to prepare themselves, get themselves ready. So they call it the half. Would that we had a half that was peaceful. Our half would be...
We had half a second.
Yeah, that's true. We have peace and quiet from... Well, we don't. Our half would be 8:30 till 9 o'clock. And you know what I'm doing then. I'm swearing at YouTube, something chronic. Right, they can see your screen, Mike, and I do believe they can hear you as well.
Good.
So away you go.
Right, VBA. What I thought I'd do is do some VBA in Access and do some VBA in Excel. And hopefully that will satisfy Neil.
And everybody else.
And everyone else. But Neil's was the one that... yeah, I'll blame Neil for this one. So yeah, VBA, it stands for Visual Basic for Applications. It's a programming language, and it's actually built into all the Office applications, as Elaine has already said. And it's used for automation. Now, macros allow you to automate a set of actions, but macros do have their limitations compared to VBA. So if I open up this database here, this Access database, and then I click on Create. Over on the right, I've got a section on the Create ribbon, which is called Macros and Code. So if I go to Macro, that would allow me to create a macro. A macro and a procedure, which is VBA terminology, are pretty much the same thing. It's just two different words for the same thing. A set of actions that you wrap up into a single unit that can then be played back or run, to use the terminology, and it just goes through those actions and runs them automatically one after the other. So it's an automation tool. Macros I'm not going to cover today. Macros are actually quite powerful in Access. They can automate a set of tasks, and if you look on the right hand side, you can see you've got conditions and ifs and things like that. But I want to stick to VBA today. But yeah, if you want to create a macro, you can go to Create Macro. But you'll also see in that section on the ribbon, you've got Visual Basic, which would just take you to the Visual Basic editor, which we'll look at shortly. You've got Module. A module, you store your macro code or your VBA code, and you'll find that I tend to use the words macro and procedure, or macro and VBA code, interchangeably. A class module is something totally different. A class module lets you create your own objects. So, for example, in Access, you have, as you know from the past few weeks, tables, queries, forms, and reports. And in Excel, you have worksheets and columns and rows and cells and charts, etc., etc. In PowerPoint, you have slides and presentations, which is the actual file, and elements on the slide. All of these things are objects, and you use VBA to work with those objects, do things with those objects. A class module lets you create your own objects, and that's something I'm not going to cover today because it's getting really advanced. So the first thing I'll do is, from Create, I'll click on Visual Basic, and that takes us to the Visual Basic editor for this file or this database. So you can see it tells you at the top Visual Basic for applications, the file, which is MacBites Academy, and we're actually in the form called FRM Students. And the reason for that is the only, right now, that is the only bit of code in this file. We are going to write more code, but right now this is the only bit of code in this file, because this was a demo I wanted to show you later. I thought I could delete this and retype it from scratch, but I think it's a bit too long for me to just sit there and type from scratch. But when you look down in fact, yeah, let me close this down. No, actually, I'll leave it open. When you look down the left-hand side of the screen, you have a panel which is called the Project Explorer, and underneath that you've got the Properties window, and then the rest of the screen is the Code window. Now, if you want to close those Properties windows and Project Explorer windows down, you can just hit the little cross in the corner. I personally wouldn't do that, because although you've got more room for your actual code, those windows that I've just closed down are pretty useful. So if you want to get them back, just go to View, Project Explorer. So that wasn't Project Explorer, was it? Go to, let's close that down. Go to View, Project Explorer. Where's it gone? There it is. And View Properties window. And if you want to resize them vertically, you can do. If you want to resize them horizontally, you can do. So we have a form. That is a form that is in the database. If I just move that code window over there, there's the form. You may remember that from last week. There's our form. And our form is pulling data through from a table. But inside the form, there is a module, and inside the module there is one procedure. So the form lives in a folder called Access Class Objects, because the form is an object. You can, as I showed you before or mentioned before, create your own objects, but we're not covering that. So the objects we're talking about are tables, queries, forms and reports. Primarily reports and forms, because you tend not to have code attached to tables and queries. So we have a form. The form lives inside this class objects folder, and the folder lives inside a project whose name is MacBites Academy 1, and the file is MacBites Academy. Okay, you can rename these projects if you want to, but most people just tend to leave them as they are. Now, what that code is doing, I'll come back to later. But before you can write any code, you need somewhere to store it. And you store it, as I've just said, inside a module. So if I go back to the Visual Basic, now at this point I've got that form open, which I don't particularly need. So I'll go to Create Visual Basic. And you might say, why don't I write the code inside this module here, the module that is called Form FRM students? Well, you could do, but if you did, that code would only run within that form. If we had a report and we wanted to write code attached to that report, then what we would do is go into the report, go into the design of that report, click the code button on the ribbon, and that would take us into here, but it would have the report name. Let me show you. I think we've got a report in here. Yeah, we've actually got a couple. So if I go into the design view of that report, click the view code button on the ribbon, that takes us into the VBA editor attached to this whole database, and you can now see we've got a module called Report RPT Students 1. That's the name of the report. So it always precedes the module with the name of the object, sorry, the type of object, and then the name of the object. And then I'd write my code in here. But if I wrote code in here, that code would be associated with that report, and it would only run when that report was open. I might want to write a generic piece of code. I might want to write a piece of code that can be used anywhere at all, in which case I need a standard module. And to add a standard module, you click Insert Module. That creates a modules folder within the project, and then you click on that module and you write your code. And if you write your code in there, that is a generic piece of code that's not associated with a form or a report. To be honest, in Access, there's not that many uses for generic code, because most code tends to be associated with reports and forms. If you want to insert another module, you can. You just click Insert Module, and you can have as many modules as you like in that Standard Modules section. Why would you have more than one? Because a single module can store lots and lots of macros. You're not limited to the number of macros or number of procedures that you can store in a single module. So most people end up just having one module, and all the macros for that database are stored in that module. The reason that you might create multiple modules is because your application consists of a number of procedures and you want to logically split them up. So you have several macros in module 1, several macros in module 2, several macros in module 3, and all the macros in module 1 are to do with one part of the application. All the macros in module 2 are part of a different part of the application, and so on. So it's kind of grouping the macros together. If you wanted to, forms and reports are the UI. So that's why you have these here separately, and I guess you're coming up with that question, Neil, because I'm talking about it's rare that you have standalone procedures and standalone modules. It certainly isn't in Excel, but it is in Access because, as you say, forms and reports are the UI. So that's where most of your coding is done. But if you want to write a macro, and I'll just do it in a standard module just to show you how it's done, you go into that module by double clicking on it, you find some blank space, you type the word sub, followed by a space, followed by the name of the macro. And macro names have to follow certain guidelines, very simple guidelines. You've got to begin the name with a letter, and you cannot have any spaces. You can have underscores, but no spaces. So a lot of people use underscores to simulate a space. I tend not to. But what I do tend to do, if my macro is made up of more than one word, is I tend to use camel case. So something like this, Mike's macro. It's not case sensitive, so it wouldn't matter if I'd typed that in capitals or lowercase or camel case as I've done, but it's just easier to read in camel case. So I'll press enter after typing the name of the macro or the procedure, and what that does is it puts in an open and close bracket at the end. Normally you have nothing within those brackets, but they have to be there, and it puts an end sub. And then your code is written between the sub and end sub. If I wanted to write another macro, I would do exactly the same thing. I would go to the module I wanted to write the macro in, find a bit of blank space. I usually leave 1 or 2 blank lines. You don't have to, but it makes it easier to read. And then put in the name of the macro, press enter, and you'll see that it puts a line above the macro just to visually separate this macro from the previous one. As I said, you can have as many macros as you like within a single module. If you decide you want to move a macro from one module to another, just cut and paste it. It actually makes no difference which module a macro is in. Modules are really just for organizing your macros. If you want to delete a module, right click on its name in the Project Explorer and click on Remove Module, and it asks you if you want to export the module before removing it. I'm going to click on No. What exporting does is it creates a text file. It gives it a BAS extension, as in basic, creates a text file, and the text file contains all of the code from that module. So it's a good way of backing up just the module. It's the same as just copying everything in that module and pasting it into Notepad or any other text editor and then saving it with a BAS extension. In VBA, you will be working a lot with objects. I talked about objects a little while ago. Reports and forms and records and fields are all objects. And in Excel, columns, rows, cells, charts, worksheets, the workbook is an object. In Word, the document, a page, a paragraph, a character, they're all objects. And when you write VBA, what you're doing is you're dealing with the object properties. So every object has a set of properties, and those properties have values. And using VBA, you can read in those values and you can change those values. Objects also have what they call methods, which are actions that you can perform on those objects. So if you want Access or Excel or whatever to do something to an object, you write the code and you put object name dot method name. If you've seen VBA before, and I know I've shown you a little bit of VBA in the past, you put the object name and then a dot and then the property name, or the object name and then a dot, or the method name or the action name. So you'll see that as we go through. So let's have a look at some examples of what you can actually do, because I think I've spent enough time talking theoretical concepts. What I am going to do is I'm going to add a button onto this form. This is just a normal form that's attached to a normal table, as we've discussed in previous weeks. I'm going to add 2 buttons onto this form. One button will run this report, and the other button will run this report. The reports are fairly similar, and you can see it's just showing all the records in a certain layout. But what's going to be special about these buttons is that they will run the report just for whatever record is currently on screen. So instead of running students 1 report and seeing all the details of all the students, it will just bring back the record for Kira Farrell or Jay Pritchard or whoever happens to be on screen at the time. So I need to switch to the design view. And then I need to add a button, and I do that from the design tab, and that is the button drawing tool there. So I click it and I click where I want the button to go. And that brings up a wizard. Now, if I run this wizard, there is actually a report operations action, and I could say preview the report, and then I can choose the report to preview. But what I can't do is I can't specify any sort of criteria. It will literally, if that button is clicked, it will run the report. So it is a good way of automation, the button, and the wizard is quite useful. But what I'll do is I'll cancel out of that wizard, and I'll just change the size of the button and make sure I've got the property sheet displayed. If you haven't, you can just click the property sheet button on the ribbon, and that brings up the properties for the button whose name is Command 64. It splits the properties up into format, data, event, other, and all. And if I go to the all section, I'm going to change the name of the button, and I'm going to use the naming convention. As I've said in previous weeks, I personally don't use the naming convention for everything. I know some people are quite zealous about it, choosing a different prefix based on the different field types when they're building tables, but I tend not to go that far. But where I do use the naming convention is objects on forms and reports. So because this is a button, I'm going to use BTN as the prefix, and this is a button that's going to run the Students 1 report. So that's what I'm going to call the button. For the caption, I'm going to put Students 1. So the caption is whatever is displayed on the button. And then I want some code to run when that button is clicked, because at the moment, clicking the button will do nothing. So I'm going to go to the event section. The event section gives you a list of different events that are associated with that button. So on click, that's the obvious one. When the button is clicked, I want it to do whatever. On double click, it's very rare that you double click a button. Only if you've had a couple of drinks, you might get a, what do we call it? Twitchy finger, twitchy mouse finger. On mouse up and on mouse down. So you click the mouse and the mouse button goes down. You can have it doing something. When the mouse button comes back up, you can have it doing something else. To be honest, usually the only button that you would click on, the only action that you would perform is the on click. So I'm going to click the drop down arrow against on click and select event procedure. An event procedure, we know what a procedure is. It's another term for a macro, and this is a procedure associated with the on-click event of that button. So having set on-click to event procedure, click the little button to the right of the arrow, and that takes us into the VBA editor. But it doesn't just take us into the VBA editor, it takes us specifically into the Form FRM Students module, and it creates the skeleton of the macro. So it's put in sub, it's put in the name of the macro, it's put in the brackets, and it's put in end sub. And the macro has to have that name, because we are writing code to run on the click event of that button. That was the name that I gave to the button. You'll notice that it's also added the word private. Macros can either be public or private. Now, when I created my macros, I didn't put either word. I missed it out. Yeah, novice users do double click, Neil, so you could have a message box popping up that tells them to stop double clicking. But yes, if you don't put public or private, if you miss that word out, then it will default to public. Although a lot of people say you should always be explicit. Put public or private. I personally, I never put public if it's going to be a public procedure. But basically the difference is, if it's a public sub, then that sub can be accessed from anywhere at all. So if you have a macro in module 1 that calls another macro in module 2, so the macro in module 2 is called Mike's Macro 1, if I copy that and put its name in Mike's Macro, when Mike's Macro runs, it will run, or it will look for, the macro called Mike's Macro 2. Even though it's in a different module, because Mike's Macro 1 is public, it can see it. So module Mike's Macro can see Mike's Macro 1. Whereas if I'd made Mike's Macro 1 private, when I try and run, where's it gone? There it is. When I try and run Mike's Macro, it will fail because it cannot find Mike's Macro 1. It's there, it's in another module, but it's been marked as private. So it can't be seen by macros outside the module. When you create macros within a form or a report, they default to private. You could change it, but there's no need. But anyway, onto the code. The code in this case is just going to run the report called RPT Students 1, but it's specifically going to run it for whichever student is currently displayed. So as I said to you before, if we happen to be looking at student MBA 101, then we want it to run the report just for student MBA 101. If it was student MBA 12, we want it to run the report just for that student. So it's basically going to pass the student ID through to the report. So let's go back to the VBA editor. And this is the code that you write. DOCMD, which everyone says as do command. Do command is a very strange VBA command. It only exists in Access. And it basically means perform an Access command. Its history is actually in Access 2. Access 2 didn't use VBA. Access 2 had its own macro language. Did you ever write in Access 2?
A tiny bit, but oh God, I'm talking to you, not the microphone. A tiny bit, but usually to, you know, the auto exec thing?
Yeah.
To get into there and get out again, but not much.
Yeah. So basically for backwards compatibility, what they've done is they've kept the do command in there. And they've not replaced it with anything else. So you type do command dot. And this is where the autocomplete is very useful, because it lets you see all the possibilities that you can have. Now, if you know what you're looking for, you can just start typing it. If you don't know what you're looking for, you can scroll up and down the list, trying to work out which is the command that you want. So when you find the one that you want, you can double click on it from this list. Open report is the one that we want, because we are wanting to open a report. Now, the do command open report command takes a number of parameters or arguments. So when you press the spacebar, it gives you a little bit more help. The first parameter is the name of the report, and although it doesn't tell you there, that has to go in double quotes. So that's RPT students 1. Then a comma. You always use a comma to separate the parameters. And then you have what are called the view. So it's how this report will be viewed. Do you want to open it in design view? Do you want to open it in normal view? Do you want to open it in preview view? I'm going to go for view report because that is just displaying the report on screen. Very similar to preview actually, but preview only came in a later version of Access. Then another comma. Now, I don't want to apply a filter. You might think we do, but we don't. We want to apply a where condition. So we leave filter empty and we put a comma. And the where condition is where student ID equals the student ID from the form. You need to enclose the where condition in double quotes. So you open double quotes and type student ID, because that's the name of the field on the report, equals, close double quotes, then an ampersand, then you need a single quote. But the single quote, because it's an actual character, has to be enclosed in double quotes. And then another ampersand. So you're basically building up a string, a conditional string. Anyone who's done anything with SQL, and I know one or two of you have, will be familiar with building up strings, particularly if you've used double quotes or single quotes, which you may have used in SQL before. So what I've got there is I've got my opening double quote, then I've got my closing double quote to go around student ID equals, and then I've got a single quote, but that has to be enclosed in double quotes. The ampersands are for joining things together. So far I'm telling it to create a where condition where student ID equals. Now, what is student ID equal to? Student ID is equal to the student ID field on the form. So that student ID relates to the report, but I want it to pull in the student ID from the form. So one option would be to put forms dot, sorry, it's not dot, it's forms exclamation mark, name of the form, which is FRM students, dot, then you put student ID. So that's one way you can do it. That's a bit long-winded. So a simpler option when you're referring to the current form is to use the word me. If you ever see me in VBA, it means the current object, being the current form or the current report. Then when you press the dot, you will find in that list student ID. In fact, you'll notice that all the fields from the form are on there, along with all the other methods and properties that relate to the current form. Now, that's not it, because I then need to have a closing single quote. So if you were to write that that where clause, it will be something like this: student ID equals single quote MBA-100. So as I said, anyone who knows anything about SQL will be familiar with that. But because I've built up a string with different elements, the single quote has to be enclosed in double quotes because it's an actual character. So does that single quote, and the whole thing has to be enclosed in double quotes. So that it's actually one line of code. So all of that will run when that button is clicked. So what I'll do is I'll close the VBA editor down. I will save the file and we'll test it out. Now those are the modules that I created earlier for my demo, so they now appear in my objects list. But if I just randomly pick a record like record 19, student 19, and click the button students 1, it's now taken me across to the report. It's run the report, but just for that one person. I'll do it again. I'll pick somebody else. Freddie Wade, number 23, click the button, and it runs that report for that person. If I wanted to create another button, what I will do is I'll go to the design, and the easiest thing to do actually is just to copy that button. So if I copy that button and paste, move that button over here, and in the properties, you'll notice it's called it command 65. So I'll change it to BTN report 2, and I'll have students 2 as the caption, and then for the actual macro that's going to be run, I'm going to go to event, choose an event procedure for the click event, and click the button to the right of the event procedure. And the easiest thing to do here is just to copy that, paste it in there, and then change the name of the report. Because I still want it to, there we go, yeah. I want it to do exactly the same thing, but run a different report. So now if I switch back to the form view and randomly pick a person, say Amy Ross, click the button students 2, there we go, it runs that report. It's a different report. It's the blue background, whereas students 1 was the green background. So that will run a different report, but just for that person. Okay, let's look at another simple example. When people enter in the surname, I want it to change the surname to uppercase. I just see it's a comment from Neil. Okay, great. Yeah, once you've got code snippets, you can build them up quickly. As with any macro, anywhere, you can either, well, you've got a couple of options. If you were running several reports off different buttons, you can do what I've done, which was create the buttons and then just copy and paste the code and change it. Or what you could do is you could store snippets of code somewhere. You could store them in, well, actually you couldn't really store them inside Access. Well, you could just create modules and have your code stored in modules that you could then just copy and paste and use in other places. Or you could store them somewhere else, like, I don't know, OneNote. Or you could store them in
Notion.
A Notion. Somebody has whispered in my ear. Or some other repository. I don't use Text Expander or what's the other one we use?
Typinator.
Typinator. But Neil, there's no reason that you couldn't actually use a text expander or an alternative to build code. Yeah, it would be a very useful use of text expander. But yeah, this next example, I want to have the surnames in capital letters. I could take the same situation and apply it to any of these fields. But, you know, if you've learned how to do it or you've seen it demoed once, then you can apply that same concept and principle across the board, I often say.
Oh, Lola.
So, one option you've got is to change it in the form design itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close down this form design and go back. Sorry, what's in the actual record? I'm going to go into the design and click on the surname field. Now, if you look at the properties over on the right, one of the properties is format. And if I change the @ sign, which simply means display as entered, to a greater than sign, that tells it to display whatever's typed in that field in uppercase. That's just in the format of the properties. So I will close that down, reopen it, and you can see that it's displaying it in capitals. But that's the thing, it's displaying it. It's not actually storing it in capitals. As soon as you click into that field, it's displaying it directly as it's stored in the table. So if I open up the students table, you can see that it hasn't actually converted the data to uppercase. The data is stored as proper case, or in my case, in Farrell's case, lowercase, because I actually retyped it. That means that if you run any reports, for example, because reports pull the data directly from the table, the data for the surname won't be in uppercase. So what I want to do is I want to actually force the data to be capitalized in the underlying table. Now I know I could do a sort of find and replace or something like that on the table. I could do something, I could probably do an update query, which we talked about last week, that will take all the data in the table, in the surname field, and convert it to capitals. But that would be done as a one-off. I want this to happen every time somebody either edits an existing record or adds a new record. So what I want to do is I want the data to be entered or edited through the form, but the data itself gets written back to the table as capital data, capitalized uppercase. So let's go back into the design of that form. Sorry, that's the design of the table. Go back into the design of the form. Select the surname field and put that format back to an @ sign, so that we know that the capitalization is coming from my VBA that I'm about to do. And then what I want to do is go to the event options for that field. So I've chosen the surname field, I've gone to the properties, and I've listed the events. The event I want to choose is not the on-click event this time. It is the after update event. This one here, after update. When does that event run? That event runs after the data has been written back to the table. So each one of these events runs based on something happening. So as we know, the click event runs when something is clicked. In this case, when the surname field is clicked. The onChange event runs when the data in that field is modified. The onDoubleClick event runs if somebody double clicks in a field. I take Neil's point about new users often double click, but people tend not to double click on a field. They often double click on a button, but not on a field. The after update event runs, as I said, after the data has been edited. So in other words, you're in the form, you click in the field, you make some changes, and then you either close the form down or you move onto a different field within that form. I hear chicken.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if Kim heard chicken, but I hear chicken. Okay, so that's when the after update event runs. It also runs if you were entering a new record and you filled in a field and then moved on to the next field. Okay, so let's go back to the design view and go to the after update, click the drop down arrow and choose event procedure. And this is the after update event of that field. So I'll click the three dots. Do we have a visitor to the studio?
We did have, but now she's eaten, so she's gone.
Right. 4 legs and fur. We had a studio visitor. Right, so there is my code skeleton. Kiva did not hear this time.
Good.
Remember, you can't change the name of these macros. They have to be, in this case, name of object, name of event. And the code we're going to write in here is really straightforward. And it's going to use that me word again, Neil, because I want to convert the data in the surname field on this form to be uppercase. So you put me.surname equals ucase brackets me.surname. So set the value of the surname field on the current form to be the uppercase version of the surname field on the current form. ucase is a function. It's a VBA function. So let's see if that works, shall we? Close the VBA editor down, save the form, switch back to the form view. I'll click into the surname field and I'll put AAAAA in lowercase, click onto another row or another field, and it's converted it to uppercase. If I then close the form down and then reopen the table, it has now actually converted the underlying data into uppercase. Okay, so that's another basic example of something that you can do with VBA there. Let me give you another example. I'm going to go back to my form. I'm going to go to the design view and I'm going to go to the actual code this time. The reason that I'm going to the code is because I want to write code and attach it to an event on the form itself. Now, I can do that from here actually. I don't have to go straight to the code. What we were doing last time was we were selecting a button and then writing the code against one of the events on the button, or selecting a field or a text box and writing the code against one of the events for that text box. What you can do from this drop-down list on the properties is you can find form, and then on the events you get a list of all the events associated with the form. Now, because these are associated with the form itself, there's a lot more events. So, for example, onLoad. onLoad is run, that event runs when the form loads. There is also an onOpen event somewhere, which I can't see. There it is, onOpen. That event also runs when the form opens. And there's an activate. The onActivate event runs also when the form opens. So actually, when you open a form, and I'm talking about not in design view, but when you open a form, 3 events run one after the other. The open event, the load event, the activate event. I think it's that order. If you don't write any code against any of those events, then all that happens when you open the form is that the form opens and displays record 1. But if you write code against any of those events, then that code will run automatically when that event happens. So if you wanted to control what happens when the form opens, you write code against one of those events. Now, as it happens in this case, I don't want to write code to run when the form opens. I want to run code when the user edits a record. So if I went and changed the surname to that, what happens when I move on to the next record is it automatically saves the changes. You learned that on week 1. You don't need to hit save to save the changes to the data. If I change that again and close the form, it automatically saves the changes. Now, that can be dangerous. One of my ex-colleagues used to do that a lot because he didn't totally understand Access.
Is that why he's an ex-colleague?
That's why he's an ex-colleague, and hopefully you know who I'm talking about.
There were so many to choose from.
But I won't mention any names on a public webinar. I've now lost my thread. Yes, he used to open up a form and then think that he could just overtype the data and he'd be entering in a new record, and that of course would overtype the data. So what I've come up with is a way of being able to basically undo. So it's a warning, and this warning will kick in whenever the form is closed or we move on to another record. Now, when you edit some data and that little pencil appears, the record is set to be in what's called dirty state. And so what I want to do is test to see if the record is in dirty state. And if it is, I want to do one thing, and if it isn't, I want to do another. So I'll close that down. I'll go into the design of the form, and from the form itself, so making sure I've got form listed here, I'm going to go to not on dirty. You might think it's on dirty, but actually it's the before update. Because if you wrote code against the on dirty property, then that code would run every time a record goes into dirty mode, which is basically whenever edits are made. And that's not what I want to happen. What I want to happen is I want the code to run before the data is committed back to the table. So that's why I choose the before update event. So I'll choose event procedure from there, and I'll click the button next to the drop down. That will take me into the VBA editor, specifically into the module for that form, and it's set up the code skeleton for me. So the code, what I think I'll do actually is, rather than type it, I'll save time I'll just copy and paste it in from my notes, which I've got over here on my other screen, which are in Notion, which is my my code repository. Come on. Paste them in there. But obviously I just need to tidy this up a little bit. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, so I'll just talk through it. So this code runs, as I said, when the form is either closed or we move on to the next record, because that is when the before update event runs. So it checks to see if the form is in dirty state. And if that is true, then it goes to record dirty. Record dirty is a named location within this procedure. If you remember back to like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I'm sure some of you do, I just about do, to BASIC, where you had line numbers and you could say go to 10 and it would take you to that line number. You don't use line numbers in VBA, you used named locations, and you write it as the name of the location with a colon. So we're saying that if, and I've got this in twice probably because I copied it from Notion. So if the record is in dirty state, then go to record dirty. And when it gets to record dirty, it displays a message box that says, are you sure you wish to change this record? With a yes and a no button on it. And if the user clicks yes, so yes, I am sure I want to change this record, then it stops the macro running. Exit sub is a very useful piece of code. It just stops the macro running. If the user doesn't click yes, then they must have clicked no. Then it performs undo on that record. So this is a standard if function. If this condition is true, then do that. Otherwise, do that. End if. The first bit is saying that if the record's in dirty state, then go to here. But if it's not in dirty state, then exit the sub. You can't say end sub. A lot of people make that mistake. You can't say end sub because you can only have one end sub in the whole macro. So let's try it out. Let's switch to the form view, make a change, move on to the next record, and there we go. It pops up this box. If I click yes, it moves on to the next record. If I close the form down and say no, and then reopen it, it's gone back to what it was. Do you want to get fired? Yes, that's a better message, isn't it, Neil? Do you want to get fired? Okay. Are you ready, or are you still
Screaming at the dog?
screaming
No,
at the
fine.
dog? Right. Okay, well, in that case, I think I've gone on for long enough. I was going to do VBA in Excel, but I think I will leave that for another day. So I hope, Neil and everybody else, you found that to be useful. A good introduction, hopefully, to VBA in Access. It's always difficult with VBA in Access to try and come up with some scenarios, some use cases. But I always find it easier in Excel, but Access, hopefully, I've found some useful use cases for you. Would that trigger when tabbing to the next field? Yes, it would. It would trigger when you're tabbing to the next field. Because if you've made... Actually, no, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't.
You're lying.
I'm lying, yes. If you've made changes and you've just tabbed from one field to another, you've not actually taking the record out of dirty state. The record doesn't come out of dirty state until you either close the form or move on to the next record. Okay, so any other questions?
Jonathan's still awake. Oh no!
I did try to send him to sleep by talking about Access VBA.
Can I just request another hour of that then? Make sure it's going to be 4-4.
Rockabye Johnny on the
No, he's going to make it tonight. He's going to sleep all day tomorrow, I'll tell you. Right, let's get back to my desktop. Okay. I was having great fun with that, Mike. Yeah. Naughty me. Right, this came out of last week's, where we were talking about video editing, and I mentioned rolling edits, and you all got very interested into what a rolling edit is. So I will show you what a rolling edit is, and more importantly, why you may need to use one. So I'm going to start with why I needed a rolling edit. So let's come out of there. Right, I make YouTube videos, as you are all aware, and at the end of it, and at the beginning, actually, I have slides. So it was in relation to the discussion that we had about whether you recorded your screen. So this is Jonathan recording his screen with an overlay of a talking head, or whether he exported the slides as graphics. And I said, that's what I do. So this is how I actually start. I have an application called Post Haste, and I can create templates for projects where there's a repeating element to it, where you are constantly doing X or constantly doing Y. And in here, it's a YouTube video. So this YouTube video would actually be, this is a fake one, don't get excited. But if I did something Affinity Publisher-ish, in fact, we'll do the working with colour in. Working with colour in Affinity Publisher. Now, it doesn't particularly have a show reference, but if it did, it would be 127, just saying, Jonathan. Right, so that's all this is going to do is create an entire folder structure for me, so I don't have as much work to do. So let's create the project, first of all, put it on the desktop. And it's literally exactly the same as if you had a folder and you called it template and then you duplicated it. And then you started working on it. That's what Post Haste does for you. But it gives me a little bit of management. So it's created this folder. So this is how I start when I'm making a YouTube video. Jonathan's staying strong. I'm predicting 4-4. But you never know. Might send him to sleep yet. So I have my original source materials, and then I would create a screen recording, and then I'd create my final output that's lossless, then I'd process it in Handbrake, then I need my chapter markers, and I'd create a poster, and I may create a version for SlideShare that's based on slides, I may create a promotion for it, and if I want to make some backups as I go. So I'm sure we've all got situations like that where they need to be the same. In my original source materials, I have another set of folders. I have additional recordings that I've made. I would put my audio in there. I would have my slides in there, then my poster, then any images, then any frames, and then my data. I take it a little bit further though, because in my slides, when I open that up, I actually have overlays and a recap. So this is a Keynote file and this is a Keynote file. And it's already there, configured, set up for me. If you had to do this every time you created a YouTube video, you would never get a YouTube video out of the door. So if I open up that, it's opening up in Keynote. And that's what it looks like. So let me just get rid of some of this so we can see it better. We're not really going to need to format it, and we don't really need to see that. And if I do that, that's what the slide looks like. There's one slide. This is a placeholder, and I have a graphic that I created earlier to drop into it. That's my graphic. So this is what I do when I'm creating the wrap-up on a video, the recap of what I covered in the video. This is literally what I do, and I do this before I actually record the video. So I drag and drop my image in, and now I'm ready to write the recap of the video. So I've got my text over here, and if we think about last night, we looked at colour spaces, and then we looked at panels, and we had, if we go there and indent, we had, first of all, we had the colour panel, and then we had the swatches panel. Then we moved on to palettes, and there were 3 different palette types. Who can remember what they were? There was application palettes, and there was system palettes. In fact, we'll lose the word palette. System and document. Now at that stage, we've got too much text. And that's what all these markers are for that you see lying around, all these yellow lines. That's so if I do have a lot of text, I just pull it up to the next one. Obviously, still have too many in this one. So this is when I then start fiddling, and I do need to bring back all of this, where I can take the lines down so it looks about right. And that looks about right. So basically at the end of my video, I want to say, let's do a quick recap of that. And I want to talk through colour spaces and say something about panels, and then say something about palettes. Now, I've tried this lots of different ways. Trust me, this is the easiest way. Because what I really want is for those to appear on the screen, one after the other. If I actually presented this, that's exactly what would happen. So I'm just pressing the down arrow, or clicking, and it moves on through each of those. Brilliant. Right. I could record that, but the problem I'd have with it is, with a video like that one, I'd probably be doing the recap either before I've done the whole thing or at the end, and I wouldn't know the timings. So I'd have to edit the audio and then come in and then listen to the audio and move the slides on. Forget all of that. Let's just export them as graphics, and that solves the problem. So I actually have an export here. I always tend to export as TIFFs, but I can't for the life of me remember whether it works or not in all the apps I'm about to show you. So I'm going to go for PNG. Click Next, and it will export all of the slides. It will put them in a folder with the name of the file, which is Recap, and it will name them Recap 1, Recap 2, etc. So let's just export it. And somebody, at least one of you, should be screaming in the chat. I will go into that. There it is. Oh dear. It's one slide. And it works in Keynote, but when it comes to exporting it, you need to do something to make it export correctly, because what that's given you, it wouldn't be a great wrap-up if they're looking at all of that text as you're talking, because it splits their attention. They're thinking, oh yes, the application thing, and you're talking about colour spaces. So what you need to do is do an export where it progressively exposes the other elements. Now, you could do that as a video. If we go into Keynote, you could export it as a video. But the problem that you've got with doing that is you'd have timing issues. So what a video export would look like is this. Go to the next slide after 5 seconds. Go to the next build after 2 seconds. What? It's a self-playing video, but you don't have any other option. So steer away from it and go back to the images. And the trick is, after you've made your selection of type, you need to tick that box, which is create an image for each stage of the builds. That is going to enable you, this is the only time I ever do this build malarkey, that is going to give you multiple slides from one slide. Obviously, the alternative is to create multiple slides. Somebody tell me in the chat why that's not a good idea. Why this is the correct way to do it. Because whenever I have a presentation to do and I have 2 states of something, I tend to use multiple slides. Except in this circumstance. Would it work in here if I duplicated? And it actually would. So if I were to duplicate, and go to the first one and take away all of this and that will give me the first one. What should the second one look like? Well, that should look like that. So would that work? Well, it would. That would be one slide exported. That would be another slide exported. And where does the problem occur? When you need to add in a bullet and you realise you've now got to update 12 slides. So don't do that. Don't do that. Stick with this one where everything is happening on a single slide, but during the export, and it doesn't remember this, which is a bigger pain. You're multiplying your work if you need to make a change. Spot on, Paul. Spot on. So it doesn't remember the format, nor does it remember that you want to create an image for each stage of the build. So make sure, format first, then put the tick in the box if you need it. Then export it. It's going to export as recap again, so it's going to tell me, do you want to replace it? Yes, I do. And this time, instead of a single image, you're going to get multiple images. It's a little bit like working with, it's like tweening. You have a beginning and you have an end, and you've got all of the in-between stages in here. So let's have a look at them. 1, 2, and it's literally like watching it in Keynote. So that option is your friend. Right. But we're still not there yet, obviously, because what we've got so far is the individual images. We need to put them somewhere. So let's fold this up. They need to go in the recording. Now, when you've made a recording, this is another thing to think about between ScreenFlow and Camtasia. In ScreenFlow, the SCC file, which is the actual screen capture file, is inside a ScreenFlow file. So if you wanted to do that, you would need to import them into the finished thing. With Camtasia, you can, and now actually with ScreenFlow you can have templates. So when I'm actually working on it, I do have in here my screen recording, and I do have a template for it. But I'm going to start off with what would happen in ScreenFlow. So before we go on to how I actually do it myself in Camtasia, which up to now has been a major pain, ScreenFlow was actually better at this, but not any longer. So let's get ScreenFlow up. Having a think about it. I don't want a new recording. I want a new document. 720 is fine. That looks good to me. Now, obviously, like I'm saying, there would be a screen recording aspect to this. But what I'm showing you with a rolling edit is how to take static images and make video of them and key them up to audio. Because that's the holy grail. That's the bit that's missing. Right, so I'm keeping it very simple. I haven't got any video in here. I'm just going to take these images and I'm going to drag them in, put them in the media library. And this is literally what I do. I can show you a video, if you like, in ScreenFlow that's actually finished, and you see all of that lined up all over the place. It's an old one. There's my YouTube channel trailer, which is in dire need of an update, but that's what it actually looks like. And in here, and at the beginning, but that's, where's the group one? Where's the group one? I think it's that one. Oh, no, it's not that one. Hang on, there's a group in here somewhere. There's a nested clip. So what I've got in here is static, and then I make that and I make it move. So that's what one of my edits would actually look like all over the place. So I'm keeping this one simple and putting everything on one line. These things are overlying one another and all kinds of things. But let's go back in here. Keep it simple. Drag the images, drop them on the timeline. And what it does is place them on the timeline, each one 5 seconds. So as long as you're talking about each element that you're recapping for no more and no less than 5 seconds, everything works fine. But let's be honest, that's not reality, is it? One reason for doing it like this, I mentioned last week, is the better quality that you get. Because they're images, you've got perfect quality there. You're not worried about it being recorded and the colours slightly off. It's perfect. The only thing you need to do, you would have audio below and you would need to adjust these slides. So for instance, if I do that and say, well, that one, I only literally 2 seconds and I was done, you end up with this gap. And that's the problem. That's because you're just editing. It's not what I call a rolling edit. In fact, it's called a rolling edit in here. So I will undo that. So in essence, what you want to do, let's zoom in around here. I'm talking about that slide for 3 seconds. So I'm at the 3 second mark there, which is shown there. But I've got this bit at the end, which is the problem. And yes, I can take it back. And yes, I can go over there and I can drag that. That's a standard edit. But let's undo it. If we could do a rolling edit, what a rolling edit means is this one shrinks and this one expands to fill the gap automatically. That is the essence of a rolling edit. So you've seen the way not to do it. As I hover over this, I get this tiny little thing at the top there, which unfortunately, as I move, disappears. But it's that, it looks like a roll, and that is a rolling edit. So if I move my pointer over it, and I grab that, now as I drag it back, that is the edit point. But it fills it in automatically, and that is the Holy Grail. So what I do is I dump them on the timeline, and you can change, well, if it's 5 seconds or 10 seconds or however long you want it. 5's actually not bad for this. And then you just rolling edit like that. So I might want that one there. Talk about that one for a little bit more. That one a little bit less. You get the idea. And at the end I could extend that. And I could do this. So I can edit that in any way I like, and it's all beautifully lined up. How I would actually be editing it is I'd be listening to the video and just dragging that to match, sorry, the audio. I'd be listening to the audio and dragging that to match the audio. To some degree on audio, you can even just eyeball it. So if we open up that old channel trailer and look at the audio, at this end, you can see I've got markers on it. So that's where I'm talking about tutorials. That's when I'm talking about slide design makeovers. But you could actually eyeball it, just look at the audio and think clearly that's one point there. And then there's a gap there and there's a marker. So obviously you could actually look at that and eyeball it. But it's getting the visual aspect of it with the rolling edit. That is the only time I've ever used a rolling edit. Some people use it with proper video, talking head or video stock video or video they've captured themselves. But I never had a need to do it ever until I came to do these slide things. So that's how it works in ScreenFlow. Not every application, video editing application, we are as lucky with. And Camtasia was one of the problems. So I will save that. Save it there. Oh, there's already one called Untitled, is there? That's good of me. How organised am I? So that's it with ScreenFlow. If you're using ScreenFlow, that's it, you're done. It's fantastic. But if you're using Camtasia, you have another little step to do. Now, prior to Camtasia 2020, you just couldn't do it. Right, Paul's got a question here, which is, have you mentioned previously rolling edits are not available in Camtasia? I did, and they're not. That option is not there. But I have a Elaine trademarked hacky workaround. I mentioned it last week and I said, no, they're not there. And it was one of the things I checked as soon as it came out. And I thought, no, it's not there. But there is a way. So I'm going to get a new project. It's having a think about it. There we go, new project. Same principle. Grab the recap slides and put them into the media bin. So the media bin's on the left in Camtasia, it's on the right in ScreenFlow. And get them on the timeline. So drag the lot onto the timeline. All right, there they go. They also come in at 5 seconds. So just the way it works, and drag them up there. Right, so we can see the edits, but look what happens. Oh no, they're all doing the same thing. That's because they're selected. So let's undo that for a start and just select one. But wherever I hover in here, not good. It's just going to do that. If I wanted that one for longer, I could try dragging it, but it won't drag past what's there. And this one, drag backwards, it won't go past the end of the other one. It will bump up to it, but it won't go any further. So if I needed to talk about this one for only like 3 seconds to drag that back, and then talk about that more, I've got that double edit that needs doing. I need to shrink back the first one and then extend the second one. It is a pain. And I remember doing this and I had about 35 slides. And I'm doing it and I'm thinking, why did you change from ScreenFlow? You're an idiot. But the thing is, Camtasia for me has features in it that make it better than ScreenFlow for what I do. So I just had to suck it up. And until 2020, Camtasia 2020, that was where we were. There was no workaround. That was it. There is now a workaround. They have added the ability. So let's forget that we want these all rolling edits and stuff. They added an ability where you drag things on the timeline and they do twang. You see, you get that yellow bit and they twang. That's good news because you don't then end up with tiny gaps on the timeline. So what I mean by that is, let's imagine we've got that there and we think when we're zoomed out like this that everything's correct. But then when we try and play it, there was a slight blip there. It was literally like 1 or 2 frames that have not got content in. Right, to stop that tiny gap there, where you've made a mistake, they added a feature to 2020. So I'm going to show you these 2 bits here. We've got a tiny little gap over here and a huge gap over here. You're not going to miss that one. But there have been occasions on ScreenFlow where it jumped for me and I thought I've missed something many years ago. But now you have this feature called the magnetic timeline. Media on the track will be magnetized automatically, which means it closed up the gaps automatically. So maybe when you've finished your edit, you might want to do that, but it's going to depend how you've actually hung your video together, because there may be occasions where I do want a gap because I want what's underneath it showing through. So I drag this over here, but it twangs back. You can turn the magnet off and then move it. So it closed the problem you have over here. There's no jump anymore. And then you've manually put it back where you wanted it. Now that's as far as that feature was mentioned. That's what it's for. It's to make sure that you don't have a gap on the timeline. An unintentional gap on the timeline. But I got thinking, literally I was in bed one night and I thought, just a minute. And I lay there and after about 20 minutes I thought I'm going to have to get up and go and try it because I'll not sleep if I don't. I wondered if I put these things magnetised together, what would be the impact of extending one of them? What if I did that? Oh, it's a rolling edit. Oh my word. They are not publicising this as a rolling edit. They have no concept of a rolling edit. They've just magnetised the timeline so there's no gaps on it. Me, I'm like, oh, it's a rolling edit. It is a faux rolling edit, but it is a rolling edit nonetheless. So if I had my audio at the bottom and I'm keying that up, that one's really short. This one's longer. This one's longer, but that one's shorter. Hang on, need to get that one, pull that back. That one's shorter. In fact, this is now better than ScreenFlow. Because in ScreenFlow, let's go back to ScreenFlow, and let's open up that recent document that I called XXX because I could. I don't think that's the right one, is it? Yes, it is. That's the one. Right. In here, with my rolling edit, I'm only rolling. You see, I get to a point where I can't roll anymore and I can't roll backwards anymore. I can only roll edit between the media until it bumps up to the next media, which is an issue if I want to do a kind of rolling edit here and take that to 15 seconds, I've lost slide 2. But that is a rolling edit, and that was as good as it got. But now, in here, that doesn't happen. So I'm on my first one, and I need to move it, and the whole lot moves. So I can independently move from slide to slide and just make my edits. And even if I wanted that to run into, say, that point, so basically this one would be overrunning number 4. Well, it doesn't. It just pushes it out of the way, and then I can carry on. I finally have my rolling edit in Camtasia, and it's better than ScreenFlow. So I am a very happy bunny. But that's what a rolling edit is. It means you're rolling one clip into the next. So a true rolling edit in terms of captured video rather than images like this would allow you to cut off the end of one video and pull back the next one. And that's why ScreenFlow have implemented it the way they have. So for ScreenFlow, they can't see an occasion where you would need to go beyond that clip or beyond that clip. But in terms of what we do when we're creating screen captures, that's exactly what I need to do. So that rolling edit in ScreenFlow is optimized for clips that you don't need to extend beyond a certain point. It's made for video. It's not made for images. But my need for a rolling edit was images. And that's the workaround. I'm literally lying there in bed and I'm thinking, that magnetic timeline, you can't leave a gap. So if I move it, what happens? And what I wanted to know was, does everything jump? Or something's got to happen if the magnet's on. Obviously, without the magnet, no rolling edit. But with the magnet, knowing full well it can't leave a gap, I thought maybe it would rolling edit. And it does. So now I'm even more happy that I switched to Camtasia. But yes, that is a rolling edit. It's where you have 2 pieces of footage and you basically want to change the end time of the first one and the start time of the second one based on something else. And in my case, it would be based on the length of time it took me to talk about point 1 and point 2 and point 3. I'm actually wondering, do I have a video where you could see that? Probably on YouTube. At the end of one of my YouTube videos, I always put a recap on it, and that's what it looks like. It comes from Keynote, it's exported as individual images. That's the key to that. So I don't have to... See, one way that I used to do this, let's go down to the end with all these. One way would be to have this image and drag it onto the timeline, and then do all of this text work inside Camtasia or ScreenFlow. Don't do that either, because you wouldn't be able to then repurpose it easily on SlideShare or anything else. So take it from one who's been doing it for about 10 years. Just because your video editor can do text and can do that doesn't mean that's the best way to do it. It might seem a bit circuitous to go and do it somewhere else and then bring it in as images. And I'll admit, in Camtasia with no rolling edit, it took a long time, but it's still the right thing to do because it gives you multiple outputs for your content. The best ideas come at the strangest of times. Oh, they do, Jonathan. And I was lying there thinking, I better not wait, Mike. And I was tossing and turning. I thought, oh, it's no good. I've got to go and try it. So there I was at 4 o'clock in the morning thinking, it's working. So I was a very, very happy bunny. Very happy bunny. Right, where was my other slides now? I think we're going to have a declaration, aren't we, Mike? But first, we'll look at what we've got available on demand, which is on MacBites FM. We are still marooned at MacBites headquarters. Have you seen the news in the last couple of hours, Mike?
No.
I did. You know that government advisor, the one who caught COVID from Boris? Very close to Boris.
Yeah, he went to London, he travelled.
Went from London to the northeast, visit his parents. What part of stay at home do we not get? We are still marooned at MacBites headquarters. We have already said we will be marooned here for the foreseeable, so you're being subjected to marooned every day. If you would like to subscribe to it, sorry about the URL, you need to put that into your podcatcher, and I am 2 episodes behind, but I will catch up tomorrow. Honest. And you won't want to miss today's because the lovely Jonathan was on and it was fabulous. So you definitely won't want to miss that. Now, you need to find the link for this one, Mike. But last night, I did a Working with Colour in Affinity Publisher, which has had quite a few views, about 400 and odd views already in the first 24 hours, and a lovely comment from somebody who said brain full, which is pretty much how I felt. So that's available for your enjoyment too. It went private as soon as I'd finished. It was another YouTube snafu, but it's fine now. It's all available now. And we're back next week. Can't believe it's the end of May. It was February the last time I went out of the house, so as far as I'm concerned, it's still February. But apparently it's the last weekend in May. Neil saying he thought that's when I went to bed. Made the mistake of going early that night, Neil. It was about 3 o'clock, but by 4 o'clock, I was up again. Right, okay, so we are back next week. Hang on a minute. It's acting up. We love you guys. If you love us, can you give us a like? It really makes a difference with YouTube. In the meanwhile, Mike's going to have to go and check the Slack thing. We have a Slack channel where we can chat away all week, and we do. If you would like to join us, it is macbites.co.uk/Slack. And it's where we carry on the conversation. And oh boy, do we carry on the conversation. We have great, great fun. So, let's go back and get that thing for next week. There it is, while I catch up on the chat. So, this is why, Neil, no good comes of me going to bed that early. That's when I have my best ideas.
Are you going to edit the scoreboard?
That's on a totally different business entirely. But I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get our blank branding. There you go. There's our blank branding. And I'm going to go in there. That was where we were before. Not pleased. Right, where's it disappeared to? There it is. And are you watching, Jonathan? There you go. In real time. Can't say fairer than that. Well done, Jonathan. I actually think that's your best one ever, Jonathan, because I know you were up early. I know you've had no nap, and I know you've been busy. Congratulations. Excellent. Right. Let's have a look. You need to pull ahead next week, Jonathan. Oh, I might put on a 5-hour, 6-hour show. But that would be cheating, wouldn't it? Are you off next week, Jonathan? That's what we need to know. Are you off? A government minister did that as well. Neil, what?
Is he having a laughable holiday?
A government minister? Oh, Jonathan. Jonathan probably doesn't have laughable holidays like ours. These government ministers, I mean, seriously. We had that woman in Scotland who went to her holiday home twice. She was the chief medical officer. She was the face of the message, stay home. How stupid do you need to be? Honestly. And this guy, he's Boris's buddy. Didn't they think they're going to get away with it? Honestly. Oh, Jonathan's not off next week. Oh no. But well done for this week. Let's not worry about next week. Let you rejoice in the fact it's 4-4, Jonathan. And I found a use for the scoreboard in Wirecast. Never, ever anticipated I would find that. I remember when we were discussing whether to get the Standard or the Pro, and Mike said, what else has it got? And I said, well, it's got this scoreboard. Don't be ridiculous. Now you see, it was all in preparation for this. Excellent. You can't even take a half day. Oh, no. It's always good when you're with us at the end, Jonathan. And hopefully soon we'll be able to welcome Graham back, who's poorly. Not COVID, don't panic. He's poorly. So if you're watching on Catch Up, Graham, get well soon. We miss you. Right, I need to get back up here. Right. Deborah says she watched half of it in the morning. The rest is after this. Excellent. And what have you put? Oh, yes, the colour one. Excellent. Thank you for that, Mike. So what did you think of that, Paul? I mean, it was in ScreenFlow and I was so jealous, and now it's even better in Camtasia. But they're not marketing it as a rolling edit. They've not got the little icon to say you're about to rolling edit. So I don't actually think they know what they've got. I did have a conversation with them, didn't I, Mike? They made the mistake of contacting me and asking me if I would take part in a research panel. And it was one of these things, it was automated, where they had like a 20-minute conversation sorted. And they were on a conference call. And they must have I don't know on what basis they'd picked people. But when you're on a conference call, you can't see them, but you know there's a lot of them and there's only one of you. Well, I started, didn't I, Mike? And by the time I'd finished...
You did.
This is very good. You need to market that more. But this is not good. You need to fix that. So I realigned their expectations. Funnily enough, they've not got back to me since. Might have frightened them. I could well have frightened them. But never mind, hey. At least they've put that in. Oh, everybody's excited for your unboxing, Johnny. That'll be the star of the show next week. I think you do. Well, you did say you'd got some holidays left. So when does the holiday year run from? Mike's is June to June, isn't it? Or is it 1st of July?
July.
That's a good point, actually. At the moment, how would anybody know if you were sick if you took a sick day? Would you have to call in sick because you're working from home?
Yeah.
I guess you would have to call in sick. Jonathan, you might need a sick day. Do we count Johnny was awake for yesterday's show? No, Kim, we don't. It wasn't an after hours. That would be too much. Oh, no. It's an after hours thing. Jane's usually in the doghouse falling asleep to a MacBites, actually, isn't she?
She is.
Naughty narcolepsy with Jane. We have different sleep issues with different shows. This is fun since we have no live sports. This is your live sport on a Friday. Now, see, Jonathan's is sensible, runs from January to December. See, I find yours just overcomplicates it.
So
I know technically it makes no difference, but when you've moved from one company to another and there's a mismatch with the holiday dates, you're all over the place. So I wish it ran 1st of January to the end of the year. But we are having to take these holidays now, because if we don't, Mike he'll get the same number, but he will lose the ability to buy more, won't you?
Yeah.
There's a marketplace where he can buy holidays. And it's fantastic. I'm glad they've introduced that. Have you bought them yet?
No, because the market's not open.
It's like transfer deadline day.
Yeah.
When does the marketplace for buying holidays open?
I don't know.
Don't miss it.
No.
Don't miss it, because this is why we're having a laughable holiday now. Right, Paul says, great, makes sense now. Been using ScreenFlow. So I'm currently on that. I only have Camtasia 2 at the moment. Don't create enough videos to justify the cost. I'm guessing there'd be an upgrade from Camtasia 2 if you bought it direct from them. The upgrade price is $99, I believe, from memory. So it'd be $99 plus your maintenance, and then it would be maintenance only after that. But your maintenance when you buy the maintenance, it automatically covers the next one, which makes it more cost effective. Just depends. They do exactly the same job, but there are some important distinctions between them depending on what you do. So Camtasia can only record one screen at a time. It can record either your Mac, one single screen on your Mac, or your iOS device, but not both at the same time. ScreenFlow can record as many screens as you've got on your computer and your iOS device separately. So if I ever had the need to record a presentation about a video about presentation viewing Keynote, and I wanted to do both at the same time, I'd either have to use 2 different versions of Camtasia, which I actually do have and does work, or I'd do it in ScreenFlow and do it in that one. So there are differences. It just depends what type of video you're making. On a fiscal year from July to June, that causes issues as well. Really don't know why we can't have just globally sorted. If you move from one company to another, they all have to go from January to December. See, for me, it's my way or the highway, isn't it? You had problems, didn't you? There's a 6-month crossover.
Yeah.
And it's like, then you've got to take days when you don't want them, and then you've not got enough the next year. I should be in charge of HR. Everything
I
would
thought
run.
you were.
Well, I am in my own mind.
Yes, in your mind.
In my mind, I am. But yeah,
in your mind, you're running the country.
In my mind, let's be honest, I couldn't do a worse job, could I? Even if we only had 10 seconds on a Friday. Couldn't do a worse job.
Has anyone seen Boris for the last 2 days?
Have you noticed Boris has vanished again?
Yeah.
Oh, apart from being all over the front of our papers, if you've missed this because you're not in this country, think yourself lucky. Boris was all over the front of the papers today with a lady friend. You see that one?
No.
A lady friend when he was the mayor of London. And it said there is a probability, although I don't know how on earth they've worked this out, that he and this lady friend were far too close considering Boris was married. Interesting.
Talking of lady friends and closeness.
Oh, steady on.
What happened yesterday?
I don't know what happened yesterday.
You do, I told you.
What
It was your
happened?
suggestion.
Was it?
Yeah.
Go on.
I was running a training session at work and I was doing it via Teams. Now, there are some people who are working on site because obviously production of drugs is still going on. And this woman booked on the course, so she went into this office and sat on the course, but she turned the webcam on a computer and she was sat with another guy. And they were sat next to each other.
That's right.
There was no social distancing going on. And what did you say?
Maybe they live together.
Or
Or maybe they're having an affair. Well, do you know it's going to get that way where you're judging people because they're sitting too close?
yeah.
I mean, how on earth they intend to keep the children apart when sort of making the school twice the size? How do you have half the number in a class? Or have I missed something? As physics being reorganised? Our school is hexagonal. It was built in the early 80s when hexagonal was in. And no one can find their way around it for a start without trying to get half the students in it. We'll have to see
Stephen
how
has
that
an
goes.
issue.
Okay.
Stephen, if you extend this show by another 30 minutes,
Oh,
Johnny
rematch.
might go to bed.
Rematch. Right, let's have a look. Can I mention that for the first time since signing up for extra iCloud storage, it's driving me nuts. Elaine was right as always. What's it doing to you, Stephen? Let me know. The only thing I use iCloud storage for, I do have desktop and documents turned on, which I've just realised and will be happening with you, Mike. You know when you do a Zoom call and it automatically records it?
Yeah.
Sticks it in your documents folder, uploads it to iCloud.
Oh.
So I've got a gig's worth up there and I didn't even notice. Luckily, I have 2 terabytes of storage, but that's not the point. If you don't have, because you don't, do you? How much iCloud storage have you got? Is it the 5 gig or did you go for like the 150?
No idea.
He's no idea, but he's filling up with Zoom recordings, just saying.
Or delete them.
Right, why would they remove an audio file added on my iPad an hour ago? Time for a fresh look at OneDrive and save my $6.99. I do have OneDrive.
I've got
Obviously, it's
200 gig.
200 gig. Well, you're all right, but I'm just letting you know. If you keep doing that, but you're doing it next door, and so it's going on to mine. In fact, next door, they're local.
Right.
We'll discuss it later.
Right.
Goodbye, Peter. Have a nice breakfast. 32 in a room. Wow. What are you doing with the social distancing? I actually saw one news report from Manchester and they'd got the children, I mean, obviously the staff, but they had the children in full PPE. The face visor things. You should have seen their little faces. And I'm thinking, there's just no way this is going to work. You know, if the kids are fine, okay. But, you know, if somebody does have it, it's going to be on their hands or something. It's not going to work. But you should have seen them putting these masks on. And they were trying to explain to them why. Poor things. Right, let's have a look. Right, so OneDrive is cost effective, but OneDrive is not great when it comes to sharing. It's got some weirdness going on with it. We found the best one is Google Drive, but I appreciate not everybody likes Google Drive, and it's not as cost effective as OneDrive. But in terms of on an iPad, I guess it depends. What was the app? Where did it come from? Where did it go? Give me more information. Not turned on the desktop and document syncing to iCloud. I did on the basis, you're going to love this, Paul, that I don't actually use it. Which sounds ridiculous. But I don't dump a lot of stuff on my desktop. I do when I'm demoing, as you can see. So I do when I'm demoing. But that's the only time, really, there'll be something on my desktop. My documents folder is pretty much the same. Because I store my documents in a cloud somewhere, which is like Jonathan explained before on Marooned when he was talking about how easy it was to set up his computer because everything's in a cloud somewhere. So because I don't use it greatly, I thought, well, it's all right to turn it on. And that means on the odd occasion when I've left something on my desktop, I can actually get to it when I'm out on an iPad or another computer, which is how you use it, isn't it? You've tunnelled back in for stuff you've left on your desktop.
Yeah.
So for us, it actually works on account of the fact that we don't intend to ever actually use it, which is how we normally go on. We're just strange. Saw something about kids are 50% less likely to contract it. We have got this weird thing going around, though. I can't remember what it's called, but it's some kind of illness that only affects children, and it's COVID related. Quite a few have died. I think it was 100 at the last count. The skin kind of goes red and swollen, and they're saying it's related to COVID, but who knows? I don't think they actually know enough about everything yet. So Paul was more worried about his documents folder. If I used my documents for documents I did not want to lose, then no, I wouldn't use it either, Paul. But literally, if something goes in my documents folder, it's probably an accident. So I figured it was okay to turn it on, and then hopefully that would then just synchronise through. The way I use it, it has actually been okay. I'm trying to think. I've had error messages. I've had 2 error messages in Ulysses, but that was it. And there was an issue with one file overwriting another, but that was a Keynote file. And it was obviously some snafu on the internet connection somehow, that it thought a particular machine in the house had a newer copy than the one I was sat here working on. And it said, do you want to keep this one? And I have to be so careful with it, because you're looking at it and thinking, which machine am I working on and which one do I accept? I'd rather my files were somewhere else, to be honest with you. But if I move them into Google Drive, which is where I would prefer to have them, it would make them less accessible from my iPad. And I haven't actually worked out yet just how important that is to me. I very, very, very seldom edit a Keynote file on my iPad. Working with Keynote on my iPad, I am much more likely to be using my iPad or my iPhone as a remote control device for it. And I have the most amazing setups for that. But to work like that, it's slightly easier if it's on iCloud. But no, I don't trust iCloud. Don't trust iCloud at all. Because it can just suddenly purge something from your hard drive. So let's say that presentation that I've been working on tonight for 77. That at the moment, there's a local copy of it on my drive. But if Apple suddenly decide to purge it, and then I come back to look for a copy of it, it's just not going to be there. Hopefully, you'll double click it and it will download it in the background and it will open. But there's no guarantee of that. It could have become corrupt or just lost somehow. So I must admit, it doesn't fill me with any great confidence, iCloud. Let's have a look. Kawasaki disease, that's the one. That's the one. It looked very nasty. But it's not, they're not talking about it that much at the moment. I think they would be if there was thousands of children with it. It just seems to be a handful. But you're wondering, why these children? And it was horrible to see the state they were in. Right, so Stephen was recording audio to add to what the video provides as a B track. Yep. Store them on iCloud from the phone so the iPad can import them, and then when producing the video, the files are no longer on the iPad. And in case we get too excited, the same thing was happening on the iMac with Camtasia, where photos similarly disappeared from the media bin. You're confused. The media bin in Camtasia is a little bit different than ScreenFlow in terms of the fact ScreenFlow has no concept of a recording file that you can take from one ScreenFlow file to another ScreenFlow file. But Camtasia does. So it is possible for a screen recording to live outside of Camtasia. Because of that, when you put things in Camtasia, you need to save it as a package so everything gets saved together. I've had it where I renamed the Camtasia file and it lost its connection to what was inside it. So I would imagine potentially maybe you've moved it or you've renamed it. What I tend to do with it is make sure everything's fine, do a zipped backup of it, and then start editing it. But I never ever rename it without the Camtasia being closed. If you try renaming things or you move things, they will go missing. So for instance, here's a situation where they would go missing. And I'm not saying this is your situation, but this is where I've had it happen to me, and I've had reports from people of it happening to them. You saw me put my files, let's go back to my desktop so you can see. You saw me put these files, these recap files, on my desktop. You then saw me add them into Camtasia. So let's see if we can force it into an error. Let's go into 2020. Did I leave it running? I did. And you'll notice it says untitled, i.e. it's not saved. This is not saved. So my files here, obviously I want to make sure that I have a copy of these files. So I'm just going to make a copy of those files. But that file is not saved. But if this was ScreenFlow, wouldn't be a problem. Drag, dropped, they're in there. Well, I've dragged and dropped them into Camtasia, but it's not saved yet. But this is where they came from. So I'm going to delete them. I'll even do the emptying of the bin thing. Right, so they are now not on my file system, but it's fine. They're in here. And there's your problem. Now you've got missing files. Just a minute. I'd already added them in. But now the files are missing. They're missing because I didn't save the file. But nowhere does it tell you you actually do need to save the file before you move or lose the other files. So here's how you would fix that. Let's leave that alone. Let's go back over here. This is why I made a copy of them. So we've actually broken the file, like you've found. There are the images. So I'm going to put them back exactly where they were, which is out of the archive. So lose the archive folder. Not the archive folder. Excellent. Right. And now it's saying to locate a missing file, you need to select it in the media bin and use the contextual update file menu option. Oh joy. Right, so let me close that. Because I've put them back exactly where they were, it's found them now. At the beginning when I was using Camtasia, that happened to me and I'm freaking out like, what did I do? And then I realised they're not saved in there until you save the file. So I'll go to File Save on the desktop, naughty, on the desktop, demo. Now that file is saved. That should have the impact of saving the graphics with it. Let's have a look if it does. So we'll drag this back on. But I'm not actually looking at that at the moment. That's not what I want to do. What I want to do is open a tab. Go to my desktop. There is the project. Now, a CM_proj file is everything in a nice little wrapped up bundle with a bow on the top. So if I say show package contents, there's my project file. These are my recordings, which I haven't got any. But that is my media. And in my media, I have, in a very strange system, I've got all of the images. So, at that point, technically speaking, because they're in there, I should be able to go and delete them off my desktop, which was where they were, and this not starts screaming. And it's not, because now it's a saved file, and everything in the file is referenced and saved into a package. That is a very easy mistake to make. When you're editing it, you've got a kind of framework. Camtasia is acting as like a repository for stuff you drag and drop into it. But at no point does it say to you, don't touch that, because if you move it, I'm not going to know where it is. But that's actually what's happening. So the first thing to do with a Camtasia file is to save it. And I would also, if you have dragged and dropped anything into it, like you saw me do, make sure that there's a copy of it as well, as a little zip file. So that could be what's happening. I'm not saying it is, but it could be, because I can force it to throw errors right and left, which it was doing. Right, let's get back to the chat. I'd guess that's what it could be doing. Could you do a segment on cloud storage systems and how you're using it? Yes, Kim. Hear that? That's a post-it note. Post-it notes. Right. Anyone in particular or just how I'm using it in general? I have about 5 or 6 clouds that I use on a regular basis. So cloud storage, how I use it. How I use something's much easier to do because I'm just showing you what I'm doing with it. Whereas if I have to do something specific, that takes a little bit longer. So that's likely to bubble up to the top sooner, Kim. Right, and the download can be slow from iCloud. It can, and the worst thing with iCloud is you can't tell it that you want to purge a certain file. So I've got this file, it's 10 gig. Don't keep it on the local machine. You can't do anything with it. There's just no control. I know they've added a little bit more controlling, where in terms of you can share a folder, but you've got to be on Catalina to do that. And that went so well last time, didn't it, Mike? We're never doing that again. We'd put it somewhere else. It did not end well. Right, so Stephen says that is helpful. I'd save the file prior to some of the files being added, but not a regular autosave. I think it's actually set up to... There is an autosave. The one thing I will say about Camtasia, it's pretty amazing when it comes to autosave. I have never yet, touching wood, lost anything. If and when it's crashed or the machine's crashed, every single time I open it, it says, I've got this recovery file, do you want it? I say yes, and everything is there. ScreenFlow? No way. I once lost over 200 gig of space on a hard drive because ScreenFlow crashed. It took me 3 hours to find where it had put the file. It was all fragmented into smaller files and then wrapped up into a bundle, and it was 200 meg. And I had to try and piece it together from that. But you'll see here, it auto saves every 1 minute. That does not impact performance. I have never had any problems with that set to 1 minute. But obviously, it can't really do a proper autosave if you've not actually saved and named the file, because there's nowhere for it to save it to. So I would put a tick in that box. It's never caused any problems for me. And it has meant that whenever I go back in after I've inadvertently lost something or whatever, it's there. I've never had any problems with that. Ah, not just me then, Deborah. ScreenFlow did that to Deborah too. Lost a whole project. The annoying thing was I actually had the SCC. So I actually had the recording file. Camtasia records to a format called SCC. And I actually had that file. But it would not let me add it to a new project and actually read it. It was infuriating. It was a long, long time ago. They are supposed to have improved things, but I still have an issue where when ScreenFlow crashes, I don't seem to be able to get back any auto saves. There is an auto save location, but there's never anything in it. So that was one of the things that came to my mind with Camtasia. I think it was Camtasia 2018 when I switched. And there was this particular version of it they brought out. It was buggy as heck. And it would crash like 6 times an hour. But the thing was, it was rock solid when it came to recover it. There was also another issue, but then within a couple of days, they brought out the new version and it solved the problem entirely. So I'm still with Camtasia. And now I've got my proper rolling edits. I am away. So what kind of control do you have on OneDrive? I'd like to be able to tell certain files or directories not to sync to local machine. I need to be able to do this on my work MS Surface. Yep, you can do that, as Mike said. We used to call that pointer files, but it's now, is it files on demand?
On demand, I'm just typing it in.
Yeah, files on demand. Basically, each one has a kind of instruction on it, and you can tell it that. Now, I can't actually show you that because I don't actually have... Let's get back to my desktop. I don't have installed, I think Mike does, the OneDrive client. I access OneDrive in a totally different way. But OneDrive works exactly the same as Dropbox. So if I open my Dropbox folder, I can show you exactly what to do with that. Right, this is Dropbox, and I have here folders that have the green tick, meaning everything in there is local. And I have other ones like this one with the cloud on, which means everything is online only. So I have 3 that are local, which is apps and Elaine. That's not my folder. That's my dentist's folder. That's why I can't move it. It's shared read only. And areas, which is there. So what I would do with it, let's take something like, there's 9 items in there, so I'll make a copy of it. So if this was OneDrive, what you would do is you drag and drop it like I've just done. You then get some kind of symbol that tells you it's uploading. When it's finished uploading, then you get to tell it where to store it. Good night, Stephen. So it's done and it's local. But all you actually need to do is to click on it, go to Smart Sync and say online only. And poof, it disappears up into the cloud, and everything that's in there is now on the cloud, but it's not local. So it's freed up local space here. OneDrive works exactly the same way, but I don't have the OneDrive client installed because I don't want anything from OneDrive on my system. I want access to OneDrive, but I don't want any of the files. I have no need for any of the files to be stored locally. So I have down here access to OneDrive, the little icon next to it, and I've got the same one for Box and MacBites FM, which is on S3, and MacBites S3, which is, guess what, on S3. All of these are mounted via Cloud Mounter. Jonathan may well have nodded off, in which case I'm claiming that back. Just saying. And I mention that because...
He's gone to bed and he thinks he's won.
They think it's all over, but it wasn't yet. We'll see. We'll see.
Like George Best when he left the 1999 European Cup
Exactly.
final.
And then United won. So what I did with these is I mounted them via Cloud Mounter, which is, Jonathan, it's on setup. So you would get that free of charge with your setup. I need to text him, don't I?
No, he's awake.
Is he? Oh, yeah. I'm impressed, Jonathan.
Full sense of security.
Nearly got 1 minute. Right, so I use Cloud Mounter. So when I go to OneDrive, it looks exactly like OneDrive. You even have the pretty little icon at the bottom, but it's actually mounted on Cloud Mounter. But none of these files, you're laughing far too much, Mike, none of these files and folders, etc., are local. But I can get to everything with it. So if I've got, what have I got in here? There's some MacBite stuff, right? None of that is local. But I can download it, use it, open it, edit it, save it. There's just no space on my hard drive taken up. So I use Cloud Mounter for it. But there is a dedicated app and it would do that. One option you would need to think about is OneDrive comes with your Microsoft 365 subscription. Your 365 subscription, if you've taken out the home one as opposed to personal, what used to be called home, is that you can share it with 6 members of your family altogether, so 5 others and you, which means that you've got 1 terabyte of storage and each one of them has another 1 terabyte of storage. But if you, instead of sharing it with your family, share it with another email address of yours, then you've got access to that 2nd terabyte of storage. The problem is you can only mount 1 instance of OneDrive with the OneDrive client. But with Cloud Mounter, you can mount all 6 if you want and have access to 6 terabytes of OneDrive storage at the same time. So that's why I much prefer to mount it via Cloud Mounter rather than use the dedicated app. The only exception to that for me at the moment is Dropbox, and that's just really historical. I've had it installed in that way. But the same would work with Dropbox. You could mount it via Cloud Mounter and use that. So I have those mounted via Cloud Mounter, and it has been rock solid, to be honest. You had problems at work with that, though, didn't you?
With?
That you couldn't access it via Cloud Mounter because it locked you out.
With Box.
With Box, it was.
Yeah, I did. It was set up. It was working. I had Cloud Mounter connecting to my Box account at work, and then one day I tried to open it in Finder, and it said, "Your administrator has basically locked this."
Nice try, Mike, but then it had gone. Yeah. Can you generate Cloud Mounter share links with Cloud Mounter?
Don't think you can.
I don't think you can. Let me...
No.
No, I don't think you can. No. That's unfortunate, but I don't like personally the sharing on there anyway, so it's not something that I actually bother with. Let me go in and have a look. No, but I don't share with it. What do you use Box for?
Is that a question to me, Neil?
I use Box for transferring or sharing images, and that's all I do with it. Mike probably does a lot more with it, don't you?
Box has become, was the AZ standard for storage. Originally, it was OneDrive. So about 5 years ago, they got Microsoft 365.
We'll be saying that for the next 10 years.
I'll get used to that. They got Microsoft 365. OneDrive was a replacement for My Documents, and SharePoint was for shared drive replacement. And then somebody said, oh, you need to look at Box because we've got a few licenses. And suddenly it became the company standard, and they're now going back to OneDrive to save money because they're already paying Microsoft for 365. So, might as well ditch Box.
Yeah, Paul's saying the same. Work locks everything down tight. It's so annoying when they do that because, it's your space. All they're doing is you could get something up there that caused complete havoc if you wanted to. Anyway, all they're doing is making it more difficult for you to actually do your job. You see, I should also be your system admin, shouldn't I, Mike, as well as HR? See, if I ran the world, everything would run far smoother, as I keep saying. What we're going to have to eat? Oh, Cloud Mounter is the type of thing I'd like to understand how you set up and use. Okay, Kim, I will add that to it.
Cake.
Excellent. Ooh, cake. I've got birthday cake. Never mind the fact it's nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. I intend to have some cake. I have cake and I intend to eat it. Before it goes off, it's my birthday cake. Can't have that happening. Neil said he found Box works well on iOS. I must admit.
I think it does.
I've not really pushed it much on iOS.
No, it's got an iOS app. I say the iOS app is pretty much the same as Box on a desktop.
Well, the thing is, I have, what's it called? File Explorer? No, Filebox. The FB one. What's that called? The one with the nice shiny icon that's on my desktop. Let's have a look. Yes, it's me. File Browser Business. File Browser Business lets me mount any kind of cloud solutions. And it's just fantastic. I use that rather than the individual clients for each cloud service. So each cloud service app is slightly different. But if I access them via File Browser, then they're pretty much all the same. So it gives me a single jump-off point. But that just comes back to Kim's point about how I actually configure all of that and set it up, which I will add to the list. They even prevented us from opening the task manager for a bit. Do they still let you log in? That's fantastic. Do you remember the one that didn't allow... is that the task switcher?
Yeah, alt control did.
They did that for you, didn't they? I'm sure they did that for Mike a while ago. There must be like a thing that goes round. Stupid things you can do that will upset all the users. And they must all be doing it at the same time. Keep the bookend birthday going. Exactly. Because we've got a Brooklands tomorrow night. So that's the end of my birthday, isn't it? Ah, well. But it's a lockdown birthday, so it's got to last more than a day. Because, we feel like you've been here for 6 months anyway. But I'm going to go off and have some cake now. So hopefully you'll be with us tomorrow night. Congratulations, Jonathan. I think that today you have proved you have made of stern stuff, isn't he? He's made his mettle today. Yes. Absolutely. A long show, no nap, new tech. I'm impressed. Recorded an unboxing video. Jonathan, you've just proved what you can do. He's going to beat me every week at this rate, isn't he? I'm going to have to up my game, I think. Let's go for a 24-hour show. At some point, Jonathan's going to need to sleep. But hopefully you'll be with us tomorrow when we are marooned at MacBites headquarters, followed by our music show.
Neil wants to know what I got you.
What did Mike get me? Oh, that was at the beginning of the show, Neil. I can show you that. Let me share my desktop again and I will show you what he bought me. It was fabulous. Where's my prezzo? It was in the week at MacBites headquarters and it was my birthday. I don't know if you saw this at the beginning, Neil. I'll put this one up first. That was him on my birthday. Bless him. In his new wig. He got me a cake in the afternoon. Jonathan says he won't wake up till 11 at this rate. We had visitors, socially distanced, who brought me another cake. This was my second cake. But Mike got me a cushion with my baby on it. That's our boy Mayor, in his sandpit. So it arrived and he was all of a flap, weren't you? That it hadn't got, it's a cover over a thing, a pillow. And the pillow was there and he was panicking that the photo wasn't on it, but it was. It was my cushion. It was. And it's fabulous. Loving it. Loving it. Yeah, so that's what Mike got me. And of course, he's looked after me all week as well. So thank you for that, Mike. Very impressed. With food and washing and things. Yeah, I this is me in the office. You know, you're doing this hand washing thing. So I'm wandering around with towels all over the place. And I've also got hand sanitizer. Every time I'm doing my hands, I'm grabbing a towel and I'm drying them off. We ended up with about 15 towels in the office. We actually bought them, if you remember. We had a lot of towels that we had. And that was so Mike could put them all in the wash in a bigger bundle. And he's wandered around behind me picking all of the towels up all week, haven't you? You know all these women that complain about the men dropping towels on the floor? Yeah, it's kind of reversed here. Well, they're just there and then they drop and then they disappear. Mike deals with it. Thank you for that, Neil. Excellent. His wig. He does like his wig. He always looks so happy when he's up to mischief, Kim. How did the wig look on Zoom, Mike? It did look pretty good.
It did. We were discussing haircuts yesterday, so I went and got my wig.
Your mullet wig.
My mullet wig. Yeah.
It has been suggested that Mike acquire, in other words, I get for him, a Brian May wig. I'm working on it. Which is pretty much an Anita Dobson wig, isn't it?
Yeah.
One and the same. Right, well, we're going to head off now. Jonathan will be relieved. But when he said 11 o'clock, Jonathan, you know, it's not even 1 yet, and that's like hours and hours away. You do not need 10 hours sleep, Jonathan. Even I'll be up by 11, won't I, Mike? Well, depending on what time I go to bed, because I don't normally get to bed till after 4 o'clock, but I'm generally up by 11. So have fun with your new toy, Jonathan. I am looking forward to hearing even more detail about it tomorrow night on Marooned. But until then, it's good night from me.
It's good night from me.
And we will both see you next time. Night, guys.